she wishes and the star comes down in a blaze of light. And everyone's like, oh, and the queen is like, oh, you spoil us with your magic. And the king's like, I didn't do this. I've been threatened. And he's a little paranoid. He's giving Ben Shapiro. And so he,
Paranoid, like literally a star twinkling threatens him.
yeah, I'm sure Ben Shapiro feels threatened by this movie. Welcome back to Not My Fantasy, the show where we talk about fantasy films and the lore that inspired them. So that might be I'm thinking like, why do we have favorite and least favorite? Because some movies we watch we're pretty neutral about, or we haven't seen before. Yeah. Welcome back. The strike is over. Negotiations are still going on. Hollywood is complicated. But for our purposes as unpaid podcasters, the strike is over. We're talking about movies again. We're here to talk about Wish and God's Ex-Wife. I'm Cullen.
I'm Hannah.
And today we have our returning Thanksgiving weekend special guest, my sibling Cait.
Hello.
Welcome back.
Welcome back. Cait and I saw this yesterday.
It feels like it was more longer ago than yesterday, but that's just how being on Thanksgiving break feels.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I keep thinking, I have work tomorrow. And then I'm like, I have another day.
Oh, I've had my back to class nightmares again.
Oh no.
I had a nightmare last night that I was friends with the president of South Korea. I don't know who that is. In this dream though, we were friends and I had been a bad friend and badly behaved. And he was sending me lectures on like how to alter my behavior in the form of Reddit threads.
I wonder what that means. What does that dream mean? See, my dreams have mostly been somebody at my work who I have a problem with, like taking over my classroom or like sitting in my chair. Like one time, like at the beginning of break, I woke up from a dream yelling at Maddie, "Get out of my chair! Get out of my fucking chair!" And then like last night's was like more like somehow a lesson was being taught to my kids before I got to school, before school started, and I was like, "What is happening?" And Maddie was like, "I think that's like your subconscious being like, this person, it can feel like they're trying to tell you how to teach, so then in your dream they're
literally doing it." That is much more straightforward than personally disappointing the Korean president.
I mean, exactly. As far as my dreams go, as straightforward as it gets.
Yeah, no, especially for Cait. Yeah, that's very straightforward. So, welcome back. We're here to talk about movies and new movies. So, Wish came out in 2023. November 22nd. Yeah, and it's it's for Disney's 100th anniversary, which is a slightly vague. I think it's based on when like Mickey was created.
Based on the novel Pushed by Sapphire.
Based on the novel Pushed by Sapphire.
Yes.
So this is all year they've been doing like 100 years, Disney Magic Legacy, and this is like their celebration of that.
Yeah.
And that has ranged from look at all these beloved characters we've created to look at all this IP we own. One of them I find more endearing than the other.
Yeah, I love that they own IP. It's so cute.
It's so cute. I'm like, when I think of the Disney legacy, I don't really initially think of Star Wars and Marvel.
True. Also, speaking of Disney IP, I briefly, for some reason at Thanksgiving, talked about how they made a Winnie the Pooh horror movie as soon as like the actual Winnie the Pooh, not the Disney character version, going into like free for all.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I was telling like my cousins, like, yeah, they made a Winnie the Pooh horror movie. It's called Winnie the Pooh Blood and Honey. So yeah.
Just because you have the rights doesn't mean you can find a good title. I
Just
mean,
because you can doesn't mean you should.
Mickey
exactly.
Mouse is going into public domain, but only the Steamboat Willie Mickey Mouse.
I was wondering about that because of like a meme I saw. I was like, how is he going to be in the public domain?
So Disney has moved Earth, Wind, and Fire to change public domain laws. So they've hoarded things in the public domain, and that's kind of why our society is the way it is right now. It's like Hollywood is so IP centric and all that. It's because of public domain laws being changed, and in Western culture has a very different view on like stories and who owns them. Which I know because I worked in a writing center with international students, and you had to be like, no, you can't do that. I understand why. Like, I know you're not trying to plagiarize. Like, this is not an issue for you, but like here you could get in big trouble.
Yeah,
it was, because different cultures, it's a different cultural understanding. So yeah, but IP, wow, that'll be talked about a lot today.
Remember when we were little kids and I explained copyright law to you?
Yes, I do. I was also thinking it's perfect that today is a family affair because our grandfather helped build the Epcot ball.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Happy 100 years of Disney. We're Disney Nepo babies.
As old as Mickey Mouse as well. That I figured out they don't have the same birthday. They're just born the same year.
Oh my gosh.
Wow.
1928.
Cool.
Is Grandpa Mickey Mouse?
Well, I think his birthday's like a week after Mickey's.
Oh, okay.
Wow.
It's like one of those things like in Hercules where Hera like switched the birth. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So yeah, Wish came out in this week.
This week.
The discourse has been discoursing, and as much as I'm someone who gets on the internet to give my little opinion, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm so sick of negative things about Wish or really anything. And it's like, we'll talk about my actual feelings on the movie, but it's like it's oversaturated. Everyone has their opinion, and I'm like, some of your opinions suck. Okay,
I just feel like people are literally dying in the Middle East, Kim. Like, why is this what you're posting about?
Yeah. So this has been in development since 2018. It's the origin story of the wishing star from 1 to 2 Disney movies, but a company symbol.
Is that what the backstory is?
Well, this is the origin of the wishing star. Yeah.
I didn't realize that that's what the point of this was.
Yeah, I mean, that's how they pitched it. But like the star was available for wishes before, I guess. So the design is actually inspired by, and people don't believe this. They think it's a ripoff of the Chris Pratt Mario movie, but I've seen the concept art in a public library book, so I know it's real. It's a cut concept from Snow White. There's going to be a scene in Snow White where they're dancing in the clouds, and they're going to be these like Cupid star babies.
Oh,
okay. That sounds like some early Disney, like weird, trippy animated sequence.
Yeah, a lot of scenes that ended up in Sleeping Beauty were pitched for Snow White, like her dancing with like a makeshift prince, the prince escaping the castle, waltzing in the clouds. So yeah. This is produced by Walt Disney Animation Studios, directed by Chris Buck, Frozen, and the directorial debut of Fawn Thorn. And I've said this again, I always put all these names and never think, oh, I should look up how to pronounce this until I'm recording. So Fawn, congratulations on your directorial debut. Screenplay by Jennifer Lee, also Frozen, and Allison Moore, based on a story by Lee, Buck, Fawn, and Moore. Produced by Peter Del Vecchio and Juan Pablo Reyes Lancaster Jones. The art style combines computer animation with the look of hand-drawn. It was supposed to be all 2D, but they said it was limiting. Also, the talent and the resources and the people who can do 2D are like dying away and fading away. And
that's upsetting.
And if we want to complain about that, we as the consumers, we were all up Pixar's butt for a decade. And so they're like, Home on the Range, Roseanne Cow, this is going to be the end. And they're like, okay, we'll make a black princess. And then it's the end. So Yeah, though, okay, the credits of this movie had star images from a character from almost every Disney animated movie. None from Black Cauldron.
Oh, interesting.
No Gurgi, no Horned King.
They had Ichabod Crane.
They had Ichabod, and the Roseanne Cow from Home on the Range made an appearance.
And also Dinosaur. Did see that.
And Dinosaur.
Lyle pointed out, he goes, oh my god, it's the dinosaur from Dinosaur.
Chicken Little was there.
I saw Chicken Little right as we were walking out. I was like, oh, Chicken Little.
Dinosaur was the movie they released because they weren't done with Emperor's New Groove.
Yeah. And then I have a running joke with my coworker because I call that movie ugly, and she worked on that movie. So she's always like dinosaur hater. And then we like get her dinosaur themed things all the time now. It's great.
Remember that terrible puppet from McDonald's that didn't
didn't work because it was plastic.
That was because Disney had to deal with McDonald's and Emperor's New Groove wasn't ready. So they're like, we'll do dinosaur. You can have those McDonald's toys.
There was also, so it's like, Maleficent, Yzma, both like villains, but the iconic character from their movie. And then they did the villain from Big Hero 6.
Which...
Not Baymax, not Hero, not Tadashi. Their hottest character.
Not Tadashi. Literally the hottest character. He did burn alive. That's not the only reason why he's so hot. That's so why. Wait, they did like the mask guy?
Yeah. I was like
the kabuki mask?
Yeah, who picked that?
Maddie was like, who is that guy? And I'm like, I think Big Hero 6.
Yeah. I was like, the film stars Ariana DeBose as Asha. Ariana, we know her from Angela Bassett Did the Thing. And I mean, many other wonderful
West Side Story.
West Side Story. She was in the prom. She's an icon. We love her. I love that rap. And that's the thing about that rap is I thought we were all laughing because it was like fun and cringe. And as someone who's had to do raps about their coworkers, it was relatable to me. And then people actually were trying to cancel her for it. And I was like,
what?
Yeah. And then Jamie Lee Curtis was like, people just need to back the fuck up. Let her do her thing. This is no Ariana DeBose haters in this house.
The bullet in Hamilton.
She's the bullet in Hamilton. Chris Pine is King Magnifico. Alan Tudyk as the Goat Valentino. Angelique Cabral as Queen Amaya. Victor Garber as Sabo. He was the king in Brandy Cinderella, which we've talked about in the past tense, but you'll hear later. Natasha Rothwell as Sakina. Jennifer Kumiyama as Dahlia. Harvey Guillen as Gabo. Evan Peters as Simon. Della Saba as Bazima. Nico Vargas as Hal. Remy Youssef as Safi. And Ron Rudnitsky as Dario. Ken Jeong and Yvette Nicole Brown provide additional voices. I think Yvette Nicole Brown was the porcupine.
I recognized her because I was like, Shirley.
I've seen her at an event for work. She was lovely. She was sweet. She was taking pictures with all the animators. We stand. Yeah, so this movie's doing okay so far. Not great. It's doing better than Strange World, but not Disney numbers. The discourse I'm describing as Rancid. The step below Rancid is Hitler, the devil. This is like bad. I think this is like some of the worst discourse I've experienced on the internet, especially for something as obviously I have a podcast about art, not to dismiss art, but like in a world where many things are going on, the fact that this discourse has gotten this bad. So it ranges from Disney's in its flop era. This is a common one. This is common with people who don't understand they're no longer 5 and the target audience.
So I have questions about that too, because like if they're saying they're in their flop era, are they forgetting about the cow? The Home on the Range cow?
Yeah, no, exactly. Because people said Disney was in their flop era for being too progressive in the Brother Bear era. I remember that.
I remember that.
Yeah. And that's why all the conservatives were at Pixar's, but I'm not a Pixar hater. I just would like to clarify. But so they're Disney's in this flop era. I officially label this discourse as broken whenever someone mentions Hannah Montana. That is a warning sign. Either people will say, everything's been bad because of Hannah Montana, or back in the day, we had things like Hannah Montana. And I'm like, Hannah Montana is a great premise for a kid's show. Has nothing to really to do with Disney animation. But whether or not you appreciate that show depends on whether or not you were the target age when it came out.
Yeah, or if you were our mom who watched it by herself.
Yeah.
Love that, by the way. I don't know any of this discourse, so I'm sitting here just so confused.
So confused. There, a lot of it was people not liking the music, which we'll talk about this music, but also discourse includes this is woke garbage. I think people don't like that there's a female lead, because now even princess movies should no longer have a female lead, or especially one of color.
Didn't we have a female lead in Encanto and like
Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs? And
yeah.
This is a female-led genre, but okay.
Is it because the actress is gay?
I mean, I've heard this movie is morally dangerous. Frustration.
Morally dangerous?
Yeah, frustration.
Well, I guess it depends on who is saying it's morally dangerous.
Also, I was gonna say a lot of the voice actors are queer and or like disabled actors, and so I'm like, the fact that this is the movie that people are hating on when so many people who don't usually get in the spotlight, a lot of people who are not white, because it's not like Disney hasn't had queer voice actors before, but like they are not white, like
yeah, they're like decades. Hercules having the first black characters too soon for these people. There's frustration with the corporate self-promotion, the corporate IP, which we can talk about. The concept of wishes, people don't love that. They say it's too individualistic and can hurt the community because we need to have a comrade-esque hive mind. That's the liberal dislike of wishes.
What?
The conservative,
really?
Yeah,
I don't think it's
wishes,
that deep.
You're pursuing something that you want, and like you.
But that could be for the greater good of the community.
Yeah,
exactly, just like the grandfather.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh my god.
And then wishes are too individualistic, and we should be careful what we wish for and trust the meritocracy of the benevolent sorcerer who worked hard. But Disney is trying to destroy the timeless wisdom of be careful what you wish for. That's the conservative one, I've heard.
But I also feel like it's the wishes are like your purest wish. It's not like some creepy wish you had as like.
Well, I mean, to say that Disney used to understand this and is now betraying that, the first song in all of Disneydom, Not As When You Wish Upon a Star, is Snow White, I'm Wishing in the Well. Mm-hmm. So it's like it or not, this is Disney and their wishes. What is a wish? Let's talk about our lore.
It's a dream your heart makes.
It's a dream.
Wait, hold on. Are we also going to be talking about said discourse as we talk about the movie and our thoughts on it? Okay, good. Because I was like, you just dumped that and you're like, okay, let's get to lore.
So I just wanted to, like, the discourse is so, like, I think I said before, not in good faith. Like, seeing whatever they can to kind of tear it apart. Because Disney is not an underdog, right? They're the corporate overlords. Mm-hmm. But as someone who works in animation, it's like, yes, studios have to approve these things, but these are made by people that have feelings, that work hard, that are not super googly millionaires. Googly, I don't know. But, like, it's a lot of these people are like regular people who live in Burbank, which is like the LA equivalent of like an upper middle class suburb.
Well, and like, I was also thinking, because I was looking at a lot of the voice actors and like, you have like Chris Pine and you have Alan Tudyk, but like a lot of them, you've maybe seen them and they're like, oh, that's that guy, or like,
even people
Guillermo
don't even really know who
Alan
Tudyk is.
Yeah,
like
it's not A-listers now, because I just saw Trolls 3 at work. It was Trolls Day. I was so excited. I loved it. It was so much fun. I'd recommend it. I'm a fan of the Trolls franchise. It's a good time, but that movie is stacked with A-list talent.
Yeah,
and not to say, oh, this cast isn't talented, but it's like when your least famous actor is like Troye Sivan, then it's like you're pulling from a lot of names, and that's always been a DreamWorks thing, to have a lot of names. Wishing and the wishing star, more specifically, because wish, what is it? Like, to define the origin of the concept of wishing, it's a prayer, it's asking for something, it's wanting something. But the wishing star, starlight, star bright, first star I see tonight, that poem began in 19th century America. So it's not that old. Now it's probably older.
So to begin with Fievel?
Yeah, it began with the mouse. There's wishing on a shooting star. Can we pretend that airplanes in the night sky are shooting stars? could really use their wish right now.
B.O.B.
The Mordecai from Regular Show and Twilight Sparkle crossover, iconic. There's also like the first star you see tonight, which is typically the morning or the evening star, which as early as Babylon, people were like, that's the same stuff. I think we're going to be saying a lot of controversial things to some astrology girlies. Astrology is coming up. So that's kind of like your two divisions of
Isn't it Venus, technically?
Yes. So the shooting stars, the most consistent lore I could find on them, like there can be positive or negative omens depending on the culture. The Greek scientist Ptolemy would say it's the gods peeking through the sky, to look at you. So it's like
it's like, wow, they're literally peeking. It's all downhill from here.
It's all downhill. Peeking. And so it's like they're checking out what's going on with mortals, so it's a good time to make a wish because you'll have their attention.
Interesting. Okay, that's kind of cool. I like that.
And then we have the morning and evening star, Venus, which as early as Babylon they were calling the beautiful lady. It's a beautiful Venus has always been girly pop coded. We've talked about her. Remember back in the Book of Life over a year ago, we talked about Inanna/Ishtar's descent into the underworld. The goddess of love and war, the queen of heaven. She was associated with the planet Venus. And so was Astarte, the Phoenician goddess, called the queen of heaven. We mentioned her in the Diablo episode because she was also connected with Ashura, who is Yahweh or God's wife. And then when people were like, we don't want that, we don't want her, that's when we get the stories of Elijah fighting Jezebel's priests and the priests of Baal, and then they literally write in and Astarte later, and then they because they're trying to like be fully monotheistic now, and so the queen, the representative of the queen, Jezebel, is knocked from her window and eaten by dogs. So they're like, we're done with this, we're waiting on the Mormon heaven wife. That's kind of these goddesses are all associated with Venus. Yes, Cait.
I have a question. Isn't this also where we get this idea of like the Virgin Mary being associated with the morning star, and that like if you ask her for something, you get it because like Jesus has to say yes to his mom?
We're on our way there.
Okay.
Spoilers. So yeah, so this is all kind of pre-Alexander the Great, right? And so this goddess, she's popping, she's popular. She goes to Cyprus, she goes to Cythera. Suddenly she's Aphrodite, she's Venus. She's that bitch. She's that girl.
She's your fire.
She's your fire.
Yeah, she's your fire.
She's your fire. She comes up a lot in this podcast. We saw that Siegel read her to filth back in Cupid and Psyche. She's busy. She's always doing stuff. She was associated because she was born from the sea, from castrated genitals thrown in the ocean, which she's associated with.
Not shown in the one painting.
Not shown in Botticelli's Birth of Venus, but she's associated with the sea and sailors and islands. She also one time there are a few stories of her granting wishes to forlorn lovers, such as Pygmalion, who fell in love. He made a statue waifu, fell in love with her, and then so this ethereal goddess turns a humanoid figure alive because someone wished for it and prayed for it. And then we talked about this. The morning star was called Lucifer and Hespera, and associated sometimes with the son of the goddess Aurora, or associated with Venus. Those, and sometimes Juno, the queen of heaven. But home skillet, not as popular as Venus. And so then when Christianity kind of comes in, there's some translation things going on. And some people mistranslate, try and say that the name Mary comes from the Latin word maris for sea. And that even though it's a Hebrew, like Miriam, like it's unrelated, right. But
it means sea of bitterness.
Oh, wow. Well. Ooh. So that's where that becomes Virgin Mary, Stella Maris, star of the sea. Often the morning or evening star that you cry out to in times of distress, and who answers because she's like the nice, soft, feminine side. Jesus can't say no to his mom. So
when you find yourself in times of trouble.
Yeah, she's taken the job queen of heaven. She's the next one. So it's like, oh, so she like moves into the wishing star, and now this is her job now. Like you wish to her. So sometimes she's associated with the North Star, because if you're like lost at sea, that's the North Star. But there's a continuation of like Venus as the wishing star. And this is
fun fact, though. I feel like I only know what the North Star is from that one scene in Muppet Treasure Island where Tim Curry explains it.
Polaris, yeah. But yeah, that's why, you know, the wishing star tends to have a feminine aesthetic. It's the queen of heaven, it's the pretty one, and she grants wishes. And there's something else I was gonna say about this.
So like the fairy in Pinocchio.
Yeah, the fairy in Pinocchio, because we talked when we did Pinocchio, A True Story. I told the story of Pinocchio, and Katie asked me to stop. She's like, stop telling this. And I'm like, we're close to the end. She's like, I hate this.
It's the most bizarre.
It's the most bizarre. There's a fairy in it, but the fairy is not what grants him life. So Disney made the choice to make a feminine blue figure.
They made a hot fairy.
A hot fairy come and grant wishes. So this is all kind of a journey that this wishing star has been on. And yeah, sorry to the astrology girlies, but this makes sense to me. Sometimes people will say it's the vibes, because I'd be like, why does Venus, in your opinion, oversee certain things? They're like, it's the vibes of how close it is to the sun. And in my mind, I'm like,
that doesn't make sense.
It's because she's girly pop coded, because she's the queen of heaven and she ships people. That's why. But everyone, obviously, I'm not here to tell you what to believe, but that's what makes sense to me internally, which we'll kind of get to when we get to one of the songs of this movie. But briefly, because we're going to talk about this more and / have talked about this more, a fairy godmother, because we got the fairy in Pinocchio. Disney has struggled with the fact that a French literary device from French Catholic aristocracy is now part of their core brand. And how do they explain that to a modern audience? So in the salons where the Conte de Fées, where the Baroness de Loire coined the term fairy tale, these women would tell these stories, and godparents are very important to nobility, especially in France. And they would like sponsor their godchildren, get them set up with good jobs and appointments, because nobility was just nepo babies, just honest about itself. It's like, no, you get it because you know somebody, you're born into this. So that was a big part. Your godparent was part of your life. So then, if your godparent is a fairy, if they have magical powers, that can help you a lot. There's some like addendums to Cinderella where it's like that made fairy godmothers real popular because everyone wanted that. So this like very specific concept, because not all Christians have godparents, you know, like, so this very specific French.
What if they have odd parents?
Odd parents. You have fairly odd parents, sometimes you have fairy godparents. So they're always like, how do we make this fit in for a modern audience? And I don't think they found a good answer yet, but they're still trying. Yeah, so that's all the lore for today.
My child lore was that fairy godparents are adjacent to the tooth fairy.
Yeah,
I can see that.
That makes sense to me. Similar majors, probably.
I was just gonna say, like, they went to the same training camp.
Yeah, like they had classes in common. Yeah. There's that movie Godmothered. Do you remember that?
You're taking the godparent track or the tooth track?
It was it came out during COVID. I remember watching it on a virtual date, and it was cringe at one point, and I paused it because I was like, and he was like, are you okay? And I was like, oh no, it was cringy, so I paused it suddenly. But yeah, that's our lore. I did used to call my godmother my fairy godmother as a kid. Shout out to Anne.
Cute.
So any thoughts before we jump into the movie?
I think my only thought is, this is how you know it's a French thing, because if it was Irish, I feel like if your fairy godmother would be very different and it might be a little scary.
Well, they have those. They have hen wives, which I used to read as a person who keeps track of chickens, like Safi in this movie. But it's actually the ghost of a fairy. And they play sometimes benevolent roles, like in the Irish version of Cinderella, it's benevolent, but there's like a Snow White variant where it's like the magic mirror kind of version character. So it's
now I'm just thinking of Navi in Legend of Zelda.
Yeah, but she's dead. It's a dead Navi is a hen wife.
Doesn't she die at some point, or am I thinking of something else?
I merely remember being disappointed with the ending because I was more concerned with who he was going to date at the end.
Weren't we all?
And then he turned into a little boy. And I was like, no.
This is how I feel like that's the test for are you gay? Were you concerned about Link's girlfriends?
Yeah. I was like, all these girls are after him. Which one will he choose? It was
I was just like, how can he choose? They're all great. One has green hair, one has red hair and she hangs out with horses.
One is a fish lady. Yeah, I was like, it was The Bachelor to me.
Me too.
All right, so Wish. There was a short that was removed, I think, because there was a short called Once Upon a Studio.
Was it something that was going to make us cry?
It was sweet. I watched it on Disney Plus. It
was supposed to be before Wish, but they didn't play. They definitely didn't play it in mine.
No,
we went straight from Nicole Kidman to movie stars.
Once Upon a Studio was like everyone leaves the studio at night, a studio I drive past on the freeway, and then you can see me in the background driving. No,
grab everybody's ankle,
and they all pop out. All the characters pop out of the pictures, and they're all getting ready for like a big group photo, and there's a bunch of cameos, and it's mainly just like look at all these characters.
House of Mouse.
Yeah, but it was of the 100th anniversary things. Again, it was only like the Disney animated characters, so it was much more like look at all these characters recreated, and less like look at all this IP we own. So I thought it was good. I thought it was fun. It was cute.
Was Black Cauldron there?
Black Cauldron featured semi-prominently. Elanwi and Taryn were in the front row. So at the bottom now we're
Taryn
here.
Kid. He
the
is
goat abuser.
I keep disappearing. It's so scary.
Taryn's after you. Taryn's gonna hit you with that stick. Okay, so plot summary. Also before they said this, the backgrounds were very much inspired by Sleeping Beauty, which you can see in the trees and the plants and in this book opening and the way everyone holds their hands like this. So there's this book opening. We learn about this guy whose home was destroyed. So he learned magic to create a safe kingdom that he and his wife founded on an island in the Mediterranean Sea called Rosas. And so what he does is he takes all your wishes and keeps them safe. And people travel from all over. My husband was sitting next to me, and as people were, he was like, "Oh, is this America? Is this like an America metaphor?" I was like, this could be a metaphor for many things.
Oh, like the American dream? I was thinking like it's Disney World. And
like give them your wishes. Yeah, I thought that. I also thought is this organized religion?
It's a cult.
It's a cult.
Cast your cares away, worries for another day, but that's Fraggle
Rock. So we meet Asha and Valentino, her goat, and her mom.
Love the goat.
And Sabo, and her Sabo is turning 100, like Disney.
Yep. Like Mickey Mouse.
I don't know why I didn't make that connection.
I made it right now in this very moment.
Oh, really?
I was just like,
yeah.
Oh.
I was like, they clearly have like some good healthcare on this island or something.
Seriously, though.
It's all that goat
and
milk.
It's free. It's clearly free. Everything's free.
Everything's free. Yeah.
It is a utopia.
Yeah, kind of like in like the time machine.
Yeah.
With the Eloy and the Morlocks.
The scariest episode of Wishbone.
Yeah. So she is a tour guide. So she's like showing people around.
I felt that so deeply.
I felt that deeply when she's like running like, hey, I'm here.
I knew, like, she was like, I have to give a tour. And I was like, what? And then she shows up. I was like, Oh my God, Lyle, it's me.
It's me.
I was like, alternate title for this could be like my terrible experience in the Disney College internship program.
It did remind me of giving a tour in college because you have to be like, look at how this could be where your dreams come true. Look at the campus. You can sit and read here. No one ever does, but you could.
And her little flag. It did make me think of the little tours that you see people go on at Disneyland.
Yeah.
So she's like, she explains it. So we get the song, our first song, Welcome to Rosis. And she explains that you, at 18, you give your wish and you don't remember it. You don't regret it. You don't miss it. You just give up your wish. And
it's like your life's wish.
Yeah.
And you only get one.
It's your heartbeat song, as Kelly Clarkson would say.
Sure, yeah.
It's like your life purpose type thing.
Yeah.
Like your I want. It's
your
like giving up your I
Yes.
want.
And he keeps them, and once a month, he does a ceremony and he grants someone's wish. Bread and circuses, baby.
Yes. It's student loans.
Student loans. Because they were like, oh, are you gonna make a cake? And she's like, oh no, I gotta see my friends. She's acting weird. And then for a second I thought, are we gonna have a cake baking scene in homage to Sleeping Beauty? But
I thought that too.
So we meet her 7 friends. Dahlia, or Doc. She has cute little glasses and a little crutch. She's the baker. There's Simon, the sleepy one. There's Hal, who is happy. Bazima, who is bashful, kind of appearing in and out. Gabo, who is grumpy. Hater to the core. We have Safi, who's sneezing all the time. And Dario, who's dopey.
That was when I figured it out. I was like, okay,
he has
7 dwarfs.
The blue hat or the purple hat and the big ears, and he's really dumb.
And he's wearing green. Because everyone else, once I realized, I was like, visually. Oh, their colors all match. Because I was like, this short guy is really crabby all the time. And he also sounds familiar. And that's when I realized he was from What We Do in the Shadows.
And he's in Blue Beetle. At one point, though, they're like, why are you so grumpy? There's certain times where the references are like, I got it. You don't gotta go this far.
Something I feel is that Disney
didn't put it together until this conversation. As soon as you said there's 7, I was like, oh yeah, that makes sense. Okay, I get it.
The 7 deadly sins.
I'm always looking for these things as an English teacher, but I feel like Disney does best when its self-referentialism is subtle, when it's usually given to comic relief characters like the genie in Aladdin, or like you just see something in the background, because their brand is not like the Muppets or like Pixar, where they kind of like, that's kind of like their humor is like self-referential. And so I feel like when Disney does it, it feels forced.
Because look at the thing.
Yeah, but that's why when I saw the dwarves, I was like, this is fine. I like this. This is fun. This is like some fun fanficky element. I didn't hate that. When they hit it too hard on the head, I was like, okay, stop.
Because I think this movie was made for the fanfickers, and I love that about it. It is
fanfic girlies.
They've been trying to make Disney into one shared universe. They've been pulling at threads, and this movie's like, let me give you a big thread, a big ball of yarn carried around by a star for you to weave these together.
I'm wearing this shirt.
Because she has an interview to be a sorcerer's apprentice. Like Mickey Mouse did, and Jens said the sorcerer from Fantasia was inspired by Walt, adding to the metaphor that the villain could be Disney itself in this.
Yeah.
So she is brought up by the queen. He keeps a light staff. So the queen escorts her up. The queen, who's giving very Queen Leah of Sleeping Beauty vibes, like if she had lines. Like just very, I love her fit. She has the best fit in the film. She's slaying every moment. This visual style slightly reminded me of Nimona as well. But
yeah, it was giving a little Nimona magic and science vibes.
And so she is like, oh, I'm rooting for you. We love women in STEM.
Based on what? I was like, I wrote down like she is a girl boss, like, and she roots for other girl bosses.
Why is the queen rooting for her? I'm like, yeah, why? Who are you to her?
Here's my other question, and I guess this is sometimes where it's like, just suspend your disbelief. We don't need the backstory. Is like, so they all they live there for free, but some of them have jobs. Well, like they're all essentially castle cast members. Like it feels like they're working at Disneyland.
Yeah, well, I mean, that is how the feudal system works, is you don't really pay rent unless you're the Irish under the British, but you know, the British suck. But, side note. But you generally, like, peasants didn't pay, you like paid with your labor and the fruits of your labor.
Everyone's contributing.
This didn't really seem like a film that was like, this is the feudal system. Like I didn't get that vibe necessarily because nobody was like dirty. I guess I'm thinking of like the peasants in Monty Python.
Monty Python. But if you think of like, we don't really know what Belle's job is or what she does day to day.
Reads
you
books.
Know, Aurora picks berries. You know, like
yes, she does.
They're teenagers. They're like, they don't, you know, she just has her little side hustle as a tour guide, like her part-time job. But I guess it's like in her community, she's known as someone who cares and is generous. There's a joke about interview questions and, oh, your flaw is you care too much.
I hate that.
I also hated that, but that's like, I don't know. I just didn't like learning about Asha that way. I felt like I just didn't know her until like she started talking about her interview. I don't know.
I think her family is goat farmers because
well,
they have the little goat and they talked about the yarn.
Yeah. I think this movie moves at a very fast pace, which in some ways was good, but in some ways, because this happens a lot because Disney's does original stories now. And so there's a ton of world building and lore that needs to happen for the magic to explain. Whereas like there is no explanation why Cinderella has a fairy godmother. There's no explanation who dwarves are in Snow White society.
But you feel okay about it.
Yeah, because
exactly.
A, it's because we know it's the story from before. And B, it's because they're like
suspend our disbelief.
Yeah, it's just like, yeah, it's a magical world. Things happen. And so I'm torn between, okay, yeah, this is just a story. And then, but they're setting it up. Some of these stories are closer to Lord of the Rings than Snow White on our fantasy spectrum.
Yeah.
And so then you're like, okay, well, if we're going to tell this kind of story, then I'm going to need some explanations. But then, as we know from the live action, sometimes when Disney does explanations, it's like, no, thank you. I didn't want that.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. That's what I kept thinking. I was like, maybe I don't want them to explain because I'll just be upset. Like when George Lucas explains things.
I'm going to highlight that, delete it. Deleting from canon.
I also I feel like I liked the world that this was set in. I was like, I would love to spend more time here. I feel like we didn't have a lot of time to like breathe. We're like constantly rushing.
Yeah,
I agree.
Yes, I mean, I feel like I feel this in a lot of movies now. I don't know if I'm old or if movies move faster, but eventually I get used to it. But when a movie starts, I'm kind of like, the screen is moving too fast for my eyes to take everything in.
It was moving too fast for my brain.
Yeah.
About the Marvels as well. Because like I liked that movie. I liked that it wasn't a million years long like every other Marvel movie.
Yeah, it was 10 minutes longer than this one.
Yeah, but I do feel like there are times where it's like, okay, we rushed through, but I feel like I still like knew what was going on in that versus like here I'm like, okay, I guess she has a job. She's interviewing for another one.
Yes.
Yeah.
I don't know.
It's just
like they had to compress things that were not as important to being able to tell the magic part of the story. Like we have to set up all the logic and the world building first.
And I'm going to say, I think it's because they did not use the music to their advantage.
Because you can explain things in a song?
Yes.
Because like I want much more than this provincial life, and then there goes the baker with his tray like always, which is kind of what the Rosa song was supposed to be, and it kind of did that.
But explaining this is a little town is a lot easier than this is a town where with a wish economy, you know. So it's like
they already explained that in the prologue too, though.
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna rag on Julia Michaels and Benjamin Rice, our songwriters, a lot, but I'm gonna give them that Belle from Beauty and the Beast is like an A tier, top tier song in the history of music, especially as a storytelling device. So like no one can fully live up to that. Like, but I think Welcome to Rosas as a song worked well enough for me. Like it was fun and it got all the information across. I just think storytelling wise, there was a lot of information. And
it wasn't focused on her. It was as like the whole world. And so like,
yeah.
Like, I mean, I guess to bring up her, like in Belle, we get more of her and like we learn about who Belle is through that song and through how others react to her. This is Rosas is just, this is our town. This is how our wish economy works.
I also was like, not to bring up Fievel again, but apparently we're okay. You know how when you watch American Tail, you're kind of confused as to what's going on most of the time because that movie did not really cater to children despite supposedly being for children.
I mainly remember weeping. I don't remember much of that movie.
Exactly. Like, because I remember watching it one of the times, like when I was a little older, and I was like, this is the time I finally figured out that they were immigrating to America. I was just so confused because there would be like a lot of throwaway lines where I'm like, why is the person upset that her name has changed? And then I realized it's because they're on Ellis Island and like her name is in Russian and they're changing it. But that was not clear because it's a way too difficult of a topic to explain to like a 5-year-old.
Yeah, that could be a plot of a whole movie for a 5-year-old. So she has her interview to be the sorcerer's apprentice, and the queen is like, I see you volunteering, I see your little tours, you're generous and you care about others, and you care about this kingdom. And that establishes that the queen
learn about her through exposition.
Yes.
There's
no
our main character. Cool.
Because there's no like Snow White has, we haven't talked about this movie on the podcast, and maybe I shouldn't use this, but like she has a literal almost save the cat moment where she finds the bird.
Yes.
The bluebird. She's like, oh, your mother, like, let me get you back to your parents.
Oh yeah. I was like, did she give him clothes? That's Cinderella.
yeah. But Cinderella does that. You know, like a lot of them have, it's very simple. It's easy, but it works for that story that,
she loves her grandpa and she has a goat.
Yeah. So I didn't.
And she has a notebook.
She's like, oh, I draw.
Save the notebook moment.
I do animation, basically. I was like, okay, I honestly, I got her enough. I was like, yeah, okay, she's fun. She loves her community because she gives tours and sings about it. So that it was enough for me, but I definitely see what y'all are saying.
I also was like, I like that she had that Dolly as her best friend. I'm like, I love when they get a best friend, like Pocahontas' best friend who didn't get enough time.
You know me, I always add a best friend when I adapt a fairy tale. Even when I did the Bible, when the priest had me write the Lady of Sorrows play, I gave the Virgin Mary a gal pal.
Love that.
You gotta.
Oh my
god. So she goes to her interview, and at first she's awkward, and there's like buzzy little bee things from
the
forbidden book.
The queen says, don't ask to see the wishes. Just don't ask. Which is weirdly important because doesn't take long for her to see them.
Because she does care and she is generous and she cares about the mission of this kingdom. Oh my gosh, is this about deconstruction? The king is like, oh, let me show you the wishes then. She's acing this interview.
I did also like his like library with all the books and everything. I was like, it's like the Beast.
Yes.
The visual of that tower is amazing. And then he opens where all the little bubbles of wishes. She came down in a bubble, bro.
Well, first, before he comes out, she's like looking at the book in the weird glass, protected glass.
And when she touches it, it like attacks her.
It's like I was just like, don't touch it. It's like flower and Beauty and the Beast.
And then she was super awkward. We'll talk about, there's been discourse about her awkwardness.
I saw that and I was like, I am fine with her being awkward. Even if it's a little bit painful, it's just like, she's supposed to be a kid.
I mean, okay, I guess we're here. Let's talk about it. There's like every princess since Rapunzel except maybe Raya has been adorkable and quirky and awkward.
I would argue since Mulan.
I think since Mulan, but Tiana does not fit.
That's true. But like Mulan was like the first one that's like, I'm a little awkward.
Well, I mean, even Ariel.
True.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, so it's
so what is everyone complaining about?
Exactly.
That was 1989.
As old as me.
So people are like, oh, they're so awkward, they're adorable. And I do get that, like, the awkward, adorkable thing is a little played out. I think it's a way to have the leading lady participate in the comedy in ways that a lot of them kind of weren't. The comedy would happen around them. But yeah, I get it. But again, the discourse is rancid. So I've heard so many things. I've heard her described as a pick-me, which I think is an official proof of the death of the phrase pick-me. You know, on this podcast, I called the goddess Athena a pick-me, and I do stand by that. But I think, like, what Asha does zero things to appeal and approve of men. Like, she cares about her grandfather, and she likes her friends. Like, it's like there's men in her life that she like cares about, but like she does not live.
No, she's more of a girl's girl. She's like, I'm here to help my friends. I'm here to help my family.
My community. So like, I'm like, pick me, what? And then there's a description of it as millennial, and I'm like, sauce. And then what's the other?
How?
And then
played by millennial.
The one thing I saw that people were saying is that like so much of this can be infantilizing to some characters, which I also get. And I think it's because it's how. Well, that like she's so quirky and so adorkable that it's like, okay, she's supposed to be 18, but like, is she also kind of acting like she's 12 or 13?
Yeah.
Like, is this...
I mean, as someone who regularly interacts with teens, they get nervous when they're in a high pressure situation. So like, I feel like it's real, but I think because we've seen that so much, people have been like, oh, we're done with this. We're tired of people having this case of affiliation. Like, but at the same time, I'm like, if she wasn't like that, you would be upset too, because it's a damned if you do, damned if you don't.
I heard
hate women in society.
I heard people call her Mary Sue, which again is a dead phrase. It's a dead, meaningless phrase, because I'm like, she doesn't really do anything wrong or evil, and I'm like, does Belle? I
saw this rant the other day. Like, I don't know if you've seen Freddie Prinze Jr.'s rant about Star Wars, because he's just like, Luke Skywalker, not that different from Cinderella. He gets a magic sword and a fairy godmother who explains it to him, except his fairy godmother is Obi-Wan Kenobi.
I mean, yeah. Like, again, Cinderella is, I think, you know, she has some flaws, but like, they're not really like, she doesn't have like a moment where she's the one who ruined everything. Like, not every story needs that thing. So I'm like, she's not a Mary Sue. And then again, some things we as consumers have said we wanted. And so when Rapunzel was quirky and Anna was quirky and Mirabelle was quirky, we all said, oh, #me. That's me. We love it. We relate to it. And then we're like, Cinderella's boring. We don't connect with that. I'm like, Cinderella is stressed and depressed on the verge of a breakdown almost all day. Yeah. Could be one of the most relatable.
Me.
#me.
Yeah, but at the same time, she was like stressed, but also like had like the patience of a saint. Like, I just always like, Cinderella is mommy. Like, she just like seems so nice, and like she would be nice to you, and like she's so nice, but she's like on her last nerve. You know, like when she rolls her eyes at the list. She does roll her eyes at one point.
Yeah,
like, and like people wanted characters that were not perfect and that were like kind of weird, and then now they don't want this brand of weird. Is that kind of what it is?
I just feel like, you know, the chef in Emperor's New Groove, when he's like, you want a special order, you make it. I try.
And I think some that does, with criticism, sometimes I get to the point where I'm like, have any of you ever made anything other than a YouTube essay talking about other people's work?
This is something that there's like this one TikToker I follow who talks about like how CinemaSins ruined discourse, and like how people just will be like, this is a loophole, this is this, or we hate this, and they have nothing constructive to say, or it's like they have no media literacy or understanding of how stories work. And this is something that I sometimes see as an English teacher, where I have to be like, well, they're doing this because blah, blah, blah. Like, it's not like sometimes I'm like, okay, we need to understand the story just in general, but sometimes kids will not get like why a character is doing something. I'm like, well, because A, the story has to go on, and like B, the witches told him to do it, so he's gonna do the murder. Like, I don't know, what more do you want?
Yeah. It's I remember a friend said, we don't talk about Bruno as a bad song because the finale of a song can't be, or like the apex can't be time for dinner. And I was like, A, you've never written a song before. B, the dinner is like a stressful, pivotal event.
Have you ever never been at a stressful family dinner?
Yeah, I was like, it's building up to the dinner, so of course that's and I can critique Encanto and Lin-Manuel Miranda sometimes, but not that. Like, that makes sense. So anyways, that's what I mean, but the discourse has already been so rancid that like the smallest thing we can talk about like 10 minutes of like what's been going on with the discourse. Okay. So he shows her the wishes and she's like, wow. And they sing At All Costs. Gives me the vibe of a song that sounded really pretty when they pitched it. And so they went with it, and it fit in a weird point in the movie.
Yep. It's a love song. I was like, oh, Disney's like, oh yes, the Disney adults will play this at their wedding. But in the context of the movie, doesn't matter.
They're like looking at the ball wishes. They're like, it's just supposed to be the beauty of wishes. We see someone who wants to make dresses and she makes Sleeping Beauty's dress. And we see someone who wants to fly with the birds and wants to climb a mountain, and someone who wants to sail. I am Moana, you know? So it's like, we're looking at all the wishes.
But it's like, I want to hold you in my arms, but they're looking at orbs.
Floating orbs.
No, and I'm like, I did not listen to the music really at all. I was mostly looking at what was happening because a lot of the songs of this movie left my head as soon as I left the theater, and I had a VeggieTales song stuck in my head instead.
Yeah.
Love that. Which one? Please tell me.
From Lord of the Beans, where he's like, to have a gift is a wonderful thing. Like, that's because like I was like, this explains what wishes are in a different movie.
So I guess we can talk about the music here. Oh gosh, we're barely in this, but there's so much.
Start about
I'm sorry.
No, but it's this song. Okay, I think the music, I would say, is mid to bad, with one song verging on good and one song like bad, and then most of it's fine. But so these are pop artists, right? They've written songs for like Selena Gomez, Justin Bieber. I want to say,
which is fine.
No, that's fine. Like a talent.
I mean, we had Elton John.
Yeah, so this was but Elton John had somebody to put him on task. He had Tim Rice.
Yeah, Elton John works best when he has a lyricist. He can do the music, but he needs somebody to be the lyrics. And I feel like Phil Collins, great with Tarzan, but that was song that was like more in the background. It wasn't like, is it diegetic where it's happening in it?
Yes.
Or
no, well, but to debate whether it's diegetic because they're singing it, but it's not like they're like, oh, you just sang a song, you know? But
yeah, but like, so it's fine that Disney is now, it's doing like pop music. Like that, I don't have a problem with. I do have a problem when the song itself is really weird in the context of the movie, because I'm like, okay, this was the song that I wanted Cullen's because you had listened to the soundtrack.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay.
I thought when I listened to the soundtrack, I thought she was singing this about the star. Like this
wasn't there a cut plot line where the star was like a person?
Yes, you sent me that.
He was a motherfucking star boy.
Okay.
So I heard the song. I thought this was at the end of towards like the star had done something, like helped somebody, been magical, and she'd been like, oh, I love this star, I gotta protect it.
Got it. Yeah. So like a love song.
Yeah.
And in a way. Yeah. When I hear
I thought the king was singing about the queen.
Okay, interesting.
When I heard just the soundtrack. Love. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, because I was like, okay, if I'm not looking at this, I'm like, okay, they're falling in love. That's what this is.
Yeah.
I open my eyes, orbs. Yeah. So that's what I have a problem with.
I think
it was fine. I didn't love it. I didn't think it was that good.
I think the danger of pop soundtracks, which again is fine, I'm not against, but is lyrical repetition And that often means it's not as specific to a situation, be kind of vague. And so this is a full circle moment for Disney, because older Disney movies had a more pop style for their time. And if you notice, like a song like A Dream Is What Your Heart Makes, or Someday My Prince Will Come, Once Upon a Dream, which is set to classical, so slightly different. There's like one set of words. She said it's Once Upon a Dream, and then it's like there's nothing, that's the only words to this song. And they repeat that. And you see that in like Rodgers and Hammerstein musicals, like Sound of Music, Oklahoma, King and I. There's a lot of repetition. And that's why sometimes...
Isn't there like the sad pop song in The Rescuers where she like touches the water?
Yes. But like The Rescuers is the 70s, you know, it was a different, but like theater and pop kind of started similar and then they diverged. And so by the time we're in the 80s and 90s with Howard Ashman and Alan Menken, with Little Mermaid, Beauty and the Beast, Aladdin, you get a lot of lyrical variety. Like there's a verse and a chorus in songs like A Whole New World and Beauty and the Beast and then Part of Your World, but they're changing the words each time.
Yeah.
And so that
I also
adds
feel like
a progression, a movement of the story. And so when this happens to jukebox musicals, and then sometimes pop musicals can fall in the same trap, repetition. Because I know people have been dogging on Lin-Manuel Miranda, and I know I have my critiques of his style sometimes. I think my critique is when they try and say it's better than the Frozen songs. I'm like, not correct. But the music, like his songs generally move the story forward. And they have
also,
that lyrical change. They don't just revert like...
When people hate on his songs, I'm like, but you all were like a fan of like I Am Moana and Shiny. Like,
yeah, everyone was a Hamilton simp, you know. It's like when we did Frozen, I was like, I was there, I know you all were obsessed with this movie, and now you say it's not good.
This movie made me really appreciate Frozen in a whole new way, because like some of the songs, like even like that reindeer song, and there was another song I was like, I was like, oh man, I would kill to be listening to those songs right now.
Yeah, because I've been...
that weird troll love song.
I've been trying to think if I like this better or not than Frozen 2, which Frozen 2, amazing visuals, amazing songs, the story.
See,
so
I was just like, I remember more songs from Lion King 2 and Little Mermaid 2 than anything in this movie. And I know that those movies came out when I was like 9, but still.
I don't know if I can think of any Little Mermaid 2 songs, but
no, I could give you at least
Lion
5.
King 2. Yeah.
I can remember Lion King 2 songs. Yeah.
Because a lot of those, I believe, were in the Broadway version.
For Lion King, yes.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
So they're singing about their love of the wishes, their bonding, but then she sees her Sabo's wish, her interpersonal, and I was like, she's in trouble, and she's like, oh, could you grant it? It's his 100th birthday. He's like, wow, that was fast, that was kind of fair. I was like, ooh, day one. Not even. And he's like, oh, it's vague. He wants to inspire a generation.
I was like, how are you looking at him playing a guitar and saying it's vague?
Well, it's like he could start a revolution. He could.
Because like the orb like, isn't always showing exactly what they want. It's like a representation, like where his is kind of vague. He wants to inspire a generation. The orb chooses the guitar.
Yeah.
Like writing a beautiful song.
He's like, he could start Beatlemania. He could be Kurt Cobain. We don't know.
He could write lyrics about, dissent against the government, and it inspires people.
This is how we know that Big Brother is watching and that Magnifico is Big Brother.
Yeah, quite literally. Because like the person who wants to, I'm assuming they want to sail, but we don't get enough with that person's wish to know if like it's like, oh, they want to explore the world, or the person who wants to fly, it's like, oh, maybe they just want to explore the world, and the orb chose.
Maybe she likes birds. She wants to be an ornithologist.
Exactly. And they chose flying. Like
we can't have women in STEM.
That's why the queen's rooting for. But
I was just like, I feel like in some ways, Magnifico is like if you took the Santa Claus is coming to town Santa origin story of like wanting to make children's wishes come true and made them like the evil version.
The evil version. Yeah, I think it is an interesting I do think this movie has a very interesting premise. I think it's an interesting, really interesting concept of like he's hoarding the wishes.
Fanfic girlies, because you can explore so many other things.
Yeah, and so that concept of everyone kind of having their wish, and that some wishes are too dangerous, and so she's like, well, then if you're not going to grant them, can't you just give them back? So then people can pursue them on their own. And he's like, no, people come here because it's too dangerous, it's too hard to make their own wish come true. So they'd rather forget that they have it. And
they can't make their own decisions.
And there's a reference to her friend Simon, who's been kind of depressed essentially because his purpose, his wish, was removed from him. And that's why he's so sleepy, because all her other friends haven't turned 18 yet. So they still have their wish. They still have their motivation. And so she's like, oh, just give them back. And he's like, well, some of them are dangerous. And she's like, well,
so then nobody could be motivated to go against him if they have no free will.
Yeah.
Essentially.
They have no desires.
So I thought, my first thought was, oh, the wishes give him like a power and he knows it. But at this point, he doesn't seem to know that like the wishes will grant him power.
That's what I
political power.
Right.
I guess political
so he's
power,
literally, but he still has a sort of benevolence to him at this point, even though we're like, that's sussy.
I also feel like when she figures that out, it's like when you learn about the Electoral College.
And because he's like, I decide what people deserve. And so it's like, he's a narcissist. It's like he thinks he's doing good, but he does good for his own reasons.
Yeah, because he had trauma in the past, which we have like that weird half-burned banner about. And I'm like, men will simply create a society where they steal people's wishes instead of going to therapy.
I mean, kind of the wizard in Wizard of Oz a little bit.
Yeah.
Oh,
he's behind the curtain.
Yeah. This is kind of deep Oz lore, but Oz is kind of socialist, and the wizard comes in to bring capitalism. Yeah.
Interesting.
So anyway, so
Asha's the opposite. It's socialism now, and Asha's there. No, it's the same. Yeah, it's the same, right?
Well, it's because some people, again, interpret your wishes all being free as like a liberal, progressive, socialist message of everyone's so self-entitled. They want to follow their dreams. And that's Disney pushing that. And then people have interpreted, it's conservative because it's capitalist. It's pursuing what you want. It's not thinking of the collective.
But a lot of them, like their wishes can be collaborative.
Yeah. I tried to absolve myself of my wishes at one point and be like, I don't want anything on a retreat. Like, I need to surrender my will to God. And then I like cried and like felt like I had no reason to exist. And so I didn't do that. So, So it's like when people talk about like, oh, wishes are, I'm like, I do. Maybe it's just because I'm a child of the Disney age. But I do feel that there is a bit of like, oh, your wish is important. It drives you.
I keep thinking of Into the Woods and wishes are children. That's what keeps popping into my head. Again, songs not from this film.
That's a good sign for this music, for this movie. So real quick, I will say that one thing that I got from this was I was seeing the wishes as basic human rights, and that those are being kept from people, and that he is the government that gets to decide
who
what
gets
rights people have.
The right to pursue happiness.
Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
Yeah.
And every so often he will give somebody their wish. Every so often we will have like a Make-A-Wish Foundation.
Make-A-Wish Foundation or vote. Where it's like, we will give you weed.
Or it also made me think of like, if you do this, this, and this, you can get student loan forgiveness.
Exactly.
Some people, they have the right to withhold their shitty website design from the gays. Other people don't.
I also thought that like her desire to like help her family, I feel like is accurate because to at least the 17-year-olds that I work with, because like they're always like, there was some college thing going on. One of my kids, she was like so nervous about it. And I was like, why are you so nervous? Like, and she's like, because this could change my future.
Yeah. Well, that's why she's nervous about this interview, but she blows it.
Exactly.
Because calls him out because she's young also. And she has that, she's like, she hasn't been brainwashed. She still has her wish. And so she's like, no, this isn't right. You shouldn't get to decide that.
Maybe this is getting a little bit of ahead, but we don't know what her wish would have been in the orbs.
Yeah.
But had she never found all of this stuff out, would her wish have been different?
Maybe.
Can wishes change?
Can wishes change?
Well, that's the other thing. I was like, well, what if that lady doesn't want to sew dresses anymore, and now she's forced to sew beautiful dresses? She's like, my fingers hurt. Like, I don't want to do that shit anymore.
Mean, isn't that Entangled, where she sees the lights and she's like, oh, what do I do now? And he's like, oh, you find a new dream. But there's also
you become the Dread Pirate Roberts because you've been pursuing revenge your whole life.
But it's like, but in that context, is Rapunzel's wish a life, freedom? And so is her what she pursues after the lights an extension of her initial wish? Because what's Hannah's wish after her wish of being the person in the podcast who learns information and goes, wow, that's crazy. After that came true.
After it came true, maybe that's why my depression got worse. I don't know. I'm kidding. My depression actually got better because I started taking medicine. Which isn't always for everyone.
He's mad, and then he's like, it's time for the ceremony. You get to sit on the dais next to the queen. And he's basically like, your Sava's wish will never be granted.
I feel like this is like America's Got Talent, and he's turning around to like, no.
Yeah. So he does a ceremony. The person who gets their wish is the beautiful dresses lady. She's gonna make beautiful dresses for the community, for their kingdom commune.
She gets magical golden scissors, as if that's the only thing you need.
Well, maybe they help. I thought those were going to come into play later, but nope. So she's so sad, and the queen is kind of like, ooh, that didn't go well. And then she's talking to her family, and she's like, they're like, what happened? And she's like, I saw your wish. And he's like, I don't want to know. She's like, no, but like, it's beautiful. And he's like, no, I gave to the king. I trust him. She's like, but no. And then he is like, are you trying to break my heart? You're tearing me apart, Lisa. And she is upset. She runs off. Time for her I Want song.
This part when she was like upset at dinner, I was genuinely upset too, because I'm like, I understand where the grandpa's coming from. This is like when you're trying to talk about like generational trauma or something. And
there's a lot. I mean, we've critiqued this movie quite a bit, but there are a lot of moments where I did really feel in it and like feel the emotion of the characters as it was happening. And so, I mean, it worked. It's, as Harry Styles would say, it's a movie. Like it worked. I was like following the story. I was invested.
Oddly enough, even though this is not a Disney property, when she was like running off during dinner and being like questioning everything, I thought of the Prince of Egypt when he's like running through the hallways, like, I'm questioning everything.
All I ever wanted. Yeah. So she's running around. She's singing This Wish, which I would probably say is the best song in the movie.
I would say it gets close to good, but I don't love it.
What hurts it is the lyrical repetition.
Yes,
that they keep, like a pop song.
Lyrics.
The lyrics throw caution to every warning sign, which doesn't really make sense.
Wait, is that what see again? Every song in this left my brain, and then I remembered songs from other better movies.
Yeah, but the song is. Are you okay, Hannah?
She's just like disappearing.
We're moving.
I
moved.
You're moving locations.
Yeah, I'm here. Okay.
So
yeah. The song, that and the fact that like there's parts in the song where she's just going, yeah, and I'm like, no one wants to sing that.
Yeah.
From a Disney movie.
Yeah.
Oh, I forgot about that. I was maybe the ghost should have sang that.
No one's going to karaoke going like, okay, I will now be singing the part in Sleeping Beauty where she goes, oh.
Exactly.
It's not Let It Go, for sure. I did like that we have the consistent Disney protagonist on some sort of outcropping or ledge with her little special tree. Also, that tree did look fun to climb. The woods were perfect. I wanted to hang out there.
The woods were great. Yeah. Disney knows their way around the woods. They know a forest. So she sings this wish, which yeah, it's like, I would say it's good, but not like, it could be a lot better. Like it has a lot of potential, but you feel it. It's Ariana DeBose. She's doing the thing. So you're like, okay. And then she's
gonna kill it. She's gonna do her best.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So just back the fuck up and let her work. Let her do her thing. And so she sings the song, This Wish, and which is, someone pointed out, the most Disney I Want songs are about personal wants. This is a community wish. Yeah. Which the only other character is Esmeralda. She's done that in God Help the Outcasts.
I did think about Esmeralda a lot with this character because she had a goat and she danced with her little like castanets.
And she wore purple.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay. There we go.
So she
spoke up against the central societal figure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The man in power. She's like, no, it's not right. Yeah.
She's causing dissent.
Yeah. She wishes and the star comes down in a blaze of light. And everyone's like, oh, and the queen is like, oh, you spoil us with your magic. And the king's like, I didn't do this. I've been threatened. And he's a little paranoid. He's giving Ben Shapiro. And so he
paranoid, like literally a star twinkling threatens him.
Yeah. I'm sure Ben Shapiro feels threatened by this movie.
Yeah, he probably does.
Yeah. And so then he is like, oh, I should use the Book of Forbidden Magic. And the queen is like, oh, okay, let's back the fuck up.
Also, maybe. I wanted to know, how do you have the Book of Forbidden Magic? And then I was like, maybe I don't want to know because Disney will over explain it and it'll be upsetting.
Be the worst. So he's like been like searching for a magic his whole life. So I guess he collected it at some point. But so
he's Ariel, like collecting magic things.
Yeah.
Like she collects human things.
Look at my stuff. Isn't it neat?
And so he's about to use it. The queen's like, maybe we just figure this out before.
Maybe we calm down.
There's a step before the forbidden magic. Like, I think there's several seats.
20 steps before.
Yeah, when she's just like, we need to take time to breathe. And also, I was like, she is the opposite of Lady Macbeth. She's like, we're not gonna like go this far.
She's de-escalating.
She's been to therapy, I guess. I saw in the concept art, which I'm like, how verifiable is this?
Yeah.
I mean, it did look like we made evil Princess Jasmine with angry eyebrows, like in that art, saying that like originally she was also going to be evil, and I was just like, Tumblr games would not have been able to handle evil daddy and mommy. Like they would not have been able to do it.
And the fanfic, it'd be too much for the fanfic girly. We can only give them so much. It'd be like giving them a nuke. So he's feeling threatened. So then she's following around this star, which gets like the yarn, is dancing around and it's sparkling. And she's like, what is it? And then it's like, oh, you look like a star. And it's all like cute and kind of cat like a little bit in the way it's kind of like rubbing up against her, like, oh, like because it sees her wish.
I also like how nature is just like, yeah, we love this star. We're ready to hang out with it.
Is this Disney explaining why some animals talk in their universe?
I didn't think it was that deep, but
okay, I'm sure. Yeah, but
is that deep?
There were references.
I didn't like the song because it was like this song is suggesting that all animals have like the same level of sentience as humans. And knowing what happens to some animals in Disney movies sometimes, it's just like, oh boy. So I didn't like these thoughts.
Okay. I mean, I liked it. It reminded me of a book I read recently that was talking about like, it was set in a sci-fi universe where like some animals could talk and some of them had like inhibitors that made them like not able to express their full thoughts. And like one of them, once he has an accident and they like redo his brain, he's just like, I'm angry because I haven't been able to express how I truly feel my whole life. And so it made me think of that. But again, that was just me having read that recently.
Okay, yeah. So the animals are singing. There are a lot of homages to Snow White with the raccoons in the old world kind of thing, and then Robin was like Pocahontas, and then
also the squirrel from
Sword in the Stone. There were
That's all I could think of.
owls, singing trees and
Mother quail.
mushrooms. There were quails, like in
Bambi.
Snow White, Bambi. So
Thumper was there.
I love the scene, but I love an animal singing.
The turtle reminded me of the turtle in Snow White. So I like the song as like musically. It's actually like nice to listen to.
This is when Shirley was there.
Sure, yeah, sure. But Nicole Brown was there, so it can't be that bad of a time. But I think the lyrics are like
in the context of the movie, or just in general?
In general. So they're like, oh, we're all stars. So I'm like, okay.
Again, all I can think of is Mean Girls.
Yes, another song about we're all stars. But there's an aspect to it, which when we're talking about Venus and my disagreement with a lot of astrology people, is that it's like, oh, like we're all from stars, so we're the same star energy, so that's why we look to the sky, and like we're all one, and that grants the wishes. And I think it is a very easy feel good but yet half-assed answer.
We are one.
Of just like vagueness, like, oh, we're from the stars, so we're stars. And it doesn't hit with me. It seems
like other thing that's like we're made of star stuff. Is that from Willy Wonka? Or am I thinking of something else? I don't know.
I'm like, to me, it takes a bit of the magic and wonder in favor of like a vagueness, which I think that's a personal preference.
Non-denominational star god?
Yeah, it's like to me, like the concept of the stars as something bigger than us, and there's something like that there's magic beyond us, but yet there's a piece of that magic in us. I think that like, oh, it's just we're all the same magic, like we
Apparently
were stars.
Carl Sagan said we are made of star stuff.
It's a Carl Sagan thing, yeah. So it gets us a little like the kind of thing someone says in a TED talk, like the kind of like pseudoscience, pseudo spirituality, where it's like it's just like a statement that sounds nice but doesn't really. It's Disney, so of course that's what they're gonna do. But like, I don't know, this is it's a personal thing. I think it works well enough, but like I don't love those lyrics.
It made me think of Carebears. Like, I don't know, like it definitely felt like this is something that would have been in an 80s movie that wasn't like a mainstream Disney movie, where it's like, this is fine.
Yeah,
I mean, it's not amazing.
Yeah. I think of the songs, it's one of the most fun to listen to, and I think visually it's one of the most interesting, because it's there's movement, there's all the animals, and you get from a point A to a point B in the song, and you do that with quite a few of the songs here, but it's not you don't feel like the movie stopped to sing, and like I think At All Costs is one of those. There's a couple of songs where it's like the movie stops to sing.
Was this the scene where she rides on the deer?
Yeah.
It did also make me think of Pocahontas when she's like showing John Smith like nature's is good.
Yeah, it had a similar energy to Colors of the Wind. I think Colors of the Wind
is a bop. Like,
I think it's a little more poetic. I think it's less trying to be like, oh wow, like look at this hip new theology or like philosophy. And Colors of the Wind has a bit of an oldness to it, even though it is written by white people parroting Native American spirituality. And I would like to clarify, but it hits for me.
Yeah,
I also feel like, because I saw the music video for it so often on Disney Channel and on the Lion King VHS, that it like I remember that more than any of the rest of the movie.
What were you gonna say, Hannah? We don't want the two descendants of the Epcot ball builder to overtalk you.
No, I don't know. I think I just am getting hung up on how like the music was very meh.
Yeah.
Again, in the context of the movie, I'm like, this is just a plant for the end, because I don't think that concept of like we are all magic. I mean, I guess it does kind of come into play. I
feel like
I think they could have built it up more.
This is supposed to be as like, in Tangled when she's in the bar and they're singing I've Got a Dream, like that's what this is supposed to be, but it's less fun.
But because why aren't we learning about her friends' wishes or people who pursue their wishes, or like
we're learning about animals who never come up again.
Yeah, I think there's
an
element of, you can say, oh, the stars are magic,
well,
and
John
that
the bear
magic's
comes up again.
Yeah, and that magic's inside all of us. Like, I think there's stars are magic, and there's a little bit of magic in all of us is all you really need. And this whole like origin of the Big Bang song is overcomplicating with nothing. Like, with nothing, this vibey language, it's overcomplicating what's simple enough, but kind of not essential to your point.
Yeah, this is also the first time I'm thinking critically about this song, because I forgot that it happened until we started talking about it.
So I don't remember any part of the song. I just remember the animals.
The animals were the highlight.
Yeah. I feel like that was like also so we could find out like how Valentino starts to talk. I like that. I know like I've seen people complain about like him as a character, and I'm like, he's just the little sidekick. There's one in every film. Usually played by Alan Tudyk. Sometimes it's Olaf.
At least Alan Tudyk had lines. He wasn't a chicken. Like he was.
How about to Juilliard?
Yeah, I told Lila about that after we saw it. I was like, the guy who played the goat also played the chicken in Moana who didn't talk. And I was like, I haven't seen Moana. I was like, well, here's the whole point, is that he's making the movie and then he looks at the camera and goes, I went to Juilliard. And it's the best. Like, that is just
I also, when I think of Alan Tudyk, I do think of like Firefly, when he's like, curse your sudden but inevitable betrayal, and he's playing with the dinosaur action figures.
Yeah, it's he was fun. He eats the star stuff and he can talk. The mushrooms were cute. They're like, good luck, Asha. Like,
I also like when she's like, don't eat that. I'm like, talking to my cat.
They're like, okay, she's like, I need to go and get my Sabo's wish and my family's wish. And the star's like, yes. And so she sneaks into the castle, hiding the star and the goat with the chickens. And like, this star can make animals talk.
This is a bad move.
And then she does the whole kind of classic, like, oh, like she's trying to figure out how to get up to the steady, but also like it's making noise. And she's like, I don't know what you're talking about.
I think it's a cliche, but it works because it's a kids movie, which I think you kind of mentioned it earlier about like maybe some of the criticisms coming from people who don't realize that they're not the target audience. And that is something that I maintained throughout my entire watching experience, is that like, I'm not the target audience for this. And if I don't like it, it's because I'm not the target audience for this.
Because critics,
not everything's for you.
Critics haven't loved it, but families seem to enjoy it. Kind of.
I was gonna say this is no different than like in The Little Mermaid, when she's just like, oh, what do you have? What are you hiding from me, Flounder? When he goes to show her like the Prince Eric statue. Like, it's no different than things you've seen in other stuff.
Yeah, one of my coworkers, I told them, I was like, yeah, I saw it, and they're like, oh my god, would you recommend it? Like, I have a 5-year-old. I was like, heck yeah, that'd be great for them.
I
mean, I had the same reactions as most of the 5-year-olds in the theater.
I know, like, there were families in the theater. When I saw Strange World, it was me and 2 other people who were with me. So, and definitely more than when I saw Ruby Gilman. There were more people, though. We saw this at a matinee. I saw Ruby Gilman at like 11 p.m. or something, but no one's watching Ruby Gilman Teenage Kraken at 11 p.m. But so Valentino and the chickens are doing a number because they're like, Safi loves the chickens because she wants to be like, oh, like, don't you have allergies? He's like, but I love my chickens.
I know. I was like so devastated for him. I'm like, this is his like purpose in life.
It's his wish.
His wish is chicken
what if that
related.
was his wish and they took it away from him? What would happen?
Well, because then when the one chicken gets huge, he's very happy about it. I'm like, he just loves chicken.
He's gonzo. He's so gonzo coded. And so she's like, please keep it a secret, because Gabo's like, only the king can do magic. Like, this is dangerous. And she's like, I didn't plan for this. I made a wish. The star showed up. And so they're like, okay, we'll keep your secret. He's like, I'm not a snitch. And then Dahlia tells her how to get up. She's like, I want to get my Sabo's wish and my mom's wish. And then the king has this little assembly, this town hall, very Stars Hollow, where he's like, okay, there's a traitor. I didn't authorize that magic. Your wishes are in danger. Oh, hi, Waves. And he's like, if anyone has any information, tell me, and your wish will be granted in exchange. And then Dahlia was told to stall. So she's like, wait. And she keeps asking questions like, what kind of evidence? And then people start questioning.
I thought that was actually funny. It did feel like Parks and Recreation.
Yeah, because then people start asking questions, which are funny, but a lot of them are also like valid.
Yeah, and I'm like, it makes me think of like sometimes when kids ask questions that are like,
yeah. And they're like, well, who decides what wishes and why only once a month?
Honestly, all of these are valid questions.
Yeah, and then he's like, "Is that all you care about? Is wish ceremonies?" And I'm like, "You took their purpose for living." Yes,
that's your brand.
Yeah.
And the queen notices him getting like angry. She's like, "Okay, let's." She's trying to de-escalate, and then
also I have so many questions about their marriage. Like, how did she end up here?
I want to know, but then again, I don't want to know. True.
I think that's all the evidence you need. He's Chris Pine, and he had altruistic motives initially. I think the magic got to his head is kind of how absolute power corrupts absolutely. Like that's kind of how I read it. So he's mad. He sings his big song that everyone was discoursing about on TikTok.
I didn't hate it.
This is the thanks I get.
I hated it.
I remember it more than any other song.
It sticks in your head. I hate. Yeah, but I hate that just repeats.
Yes,
it's like so.
That's why I hated it.
And so, like, I do think that, and I don't even charge you rent. Like a lot of things people were critiquing were valid, but I think people over critiqued
the little people that he makes come to life. The little model people that look like the Fisher Price little people.
Yeah,
and he's smashing them around like Yzma's potions.
Yeah, it was a little bit of those moments when you listen to the soundtrack.
Is this a voodoo situation?
I thought those moments where he was singing were going to be happening in front of people. Like he was saying, this is the thanks I get to those people because he's singing to them. He even says, hey, there's a traitor in our midst. But it's only he's singing that to the Fisher Price people. And
also, okay, you know how they're like, she's hiding behind the stuff and there's like the three little like beakers or whatever, and the bottom of them had colors and it was like pink, green, and blue. There's a lot of Three Good Fairies imagery, and I'm like, this is the subtle little like Easter eggs that I am fine with. Like when just
the star shooting dust around and making the objects move. Yeah, that was fun. So, but yeah, it was what invested me in the scene was she kept almost getting discovered. And like, so I cared about like her sneaking away with the wish. Everything else was.
But I was also intrigued by the Fisher Price people.
Yeah, I was like, what's going on with them? And he's like, I'm willing to sacrifice other people.
Yeah, because he says, I'd give the clothes off Benito's back.
Yes.
Which, okay, here's the thing. We don't see him do that. So if the song was happening in front of people and you see the visual reference that this is kind of sometimes how he grants wishes is by taking things from other people and giving them to others, it's like, okay, that could work, but it's happening with the Fisher Price people. And it's not cute like
very strange.
Quasimodo's.
I thought the Fisher Price people were like, he had like some sort of like tracker on them and he could like magically figure out what was going on with them or something. So that's where like when you said voodoo, it was like, okay, I wasn't the only one who thought that was
I thought there was like one for each person in the town.
Yeah.
A little bit like evil Mr. Rogers.
Yeah, it's like Quasimodo made those people that he would see from the tower.
Yeah.
And so he goes do, and then he's like, oh, I'm really mad, and then he's like fascinated and kind of ensorcelled and raptured by the forbidden magic, which is green and dragon coated. I'm like, is this where Maleficent came from? Is this Maleficent's power? Is this?
Yeah, I also was like, when is this when he opens his like secret lair?
Yes.
I was just like, he has a secret lab like Yzma, but like less fun to get to.
But I mean, you get to it the way the Wicked Queen does in Snow White.
That's true.
The
yes.
staircase with the cape, and then he has like a cauldron. You see the poison apple, and he's like gathering his spells, and he is mad, so he takes. So he first uses the dark magic, and then Asha goes home, and she gives her Sabo his wish. And he's like, oh, I feel whole. Like, and he's immediately like, I never should have given up my wish.
Yeah, like it's like a physical thing, but then it's also like ethereal, and he can just like press it back into his heart, essentially. I thought that was kind of cool.
And he's like, oh, it was beautiful. And so she's like, see, he's wrong. And then the king shows up and is like, you were turned in. And then
also he shows up so fast and out of nowhere. I was like, how?
He was scary when he popped up. I was like, and then he breaks the mother's wish.
That was upsetting.
And the power gets into him. He's like, oh, this feels really good. There's a lot of power. I'm like, oh, it is like Maleficent is essentially ruining people's wishes. It just was very like classic Disney villain. Like he's like, oh, this feels good. So some people said they didn't like that. It felt like the evil magic mind controlled him. And to me, it was less of a mind control and more of like, oh, it felt good. And he had the evil was inside of him already, the selfishness.
Yeah.
And then he was like, oh, if you're going to question me, I'm going to do whatever it takes. And it feels good to destroy things.
It made me think of Texas eating the nature, like eating the pollution. I also,
people thought he was being brainwashed
or like mind controlled.
Oh, like mind controlled. Yeah.
By the evil entity of the forbidden magic.
No, I think you're right. Is that
I think you have to be willing to use the forbidden magic.
Yeah.
Like you have to actively choose it.
Yeah.
I don't think it would just like okay, let's say if he had accidentally broken someone's wish when he was, taking it or whatever, would it have like absorbed into him like that? Maybe not. So. If he wasn't like in that space in his mind, but like he was narcissistic already,
and he
his altruistic view was already corrupt because he's like, no, I need to take everyone's wishes, keep them safe,
and
because now I know what people are thinking.
Yeah.
And also like when he crushes the mom's wish and she like feels pain, I was like, if she dies, I'll be so upset. But also it made me think of like, again, 80s cartoons. Like I think this happened in Carebears and My Little Pony, where like they stole somebody's like shadow, or like they stole like this unicorn's soul magic or something, and like they became like weaker because of it. Very, very similar to like 80s cartoon villain.
Yeah, I mean it's he's kind of reminds me of like a Congress person. Like he gets off on destroying the wishes of others. Yeah, so it's scary. He's gonna attack them, but I think their guards there.
Rubio feels threatened.
Yeah, and so she throws the star throws the yarn. He's like, ooh, the star, and then she literally like lobs a bookcase on him. I was like, you go. And they run, and the goat is like from one domesticated animal to another to the horses, and the horses get them to a boat, and the horses go back to the stables, and they're sailing away to the little island on the side, and then she's like,
I was very concerned. I felt the peril in this sequence.
This was stressful. He was scary, and so she's like, I need to
because they're on an island, and so it's like, well, where do they go? And there's this tiny island that we can hide at for a little while.
And she's like, I should never have done this. It's the fuck, I can't believe you've done this moment. And she's like, I shouldn't have wished. And the star's like, no. And the mother is like, now that we know, it's better to know. There's a lot of like, there's an element to, isn't the truth supposed to set you free? She's like, but why do I feel so weighed down?
Did we talk about how at the wish giving ceremony / granting ceremony, the people who had their wishes taken instantly got depressed, and then they were like, oh yeah, we're supposed to be happy. So like we have that hint of it being like, you are literally having a part of you taken, and so
Yeah.
To be like a unquestioning yes man.
Yeah.
Like, because they just kind of look around like,
Yep.
And so so she's like, I have to go back and get the wishes. And she swims back, and we see the ceremony where they're like, oh, Asha just, because he's mad that those people spoke out against him. So he destroys their wishes. And he starts destroying other people's wishes. He's like, oh, this is later. So he destroys their wishes to make the staff. And the queen sees it and is like, you just destroyed people's wishes? And he's like, are you siding with the traitor? This is my staff. Like, are you a traitor to Rosas? And she says, I'll never betray Rosas.
Yeah, and it's very clear that she specifically says those words.
Because she's like, her realizing her loyalty to the kingdom and his loyalty. Him and the kingdom are the same. But to her, those are two different things.
Well, I also feel like when he starts taking people's wishes and all of that, like destroying them, it made me think of like in The Little Mermaid when Ursula like helps people, then they become the little like seaweed guys.
Yeah. Yeah, because I mean, he's destroying a bunch of witches at one point. He's like, oh, Fantasyland in the sky, Neverland. I kind of hated that joke.
That was like we are a heavy-handed. It was giving Once Upon a Time levels of cringe Disney reference.
Like,
I used to live in Cinderella's kitchen and eat the wood.
Yeah, like when she's like, oh, a perfect nanny for your children, I'm popping that one. And then
I was just like, I guess, yeah, because when the Mary Poppins one, I was like, okay, but it's not an animated Disney movie.
And then he just said, oh, true love, so much for true love.
Which
like
is
gay
Ursula.
Icon Ursula. Yeah.
When he is throwing things into a cauldron that's very Ursula, you got to take matters into your own tentacles. But like, you kind of like, even though Ursula's evil, like you're kind of like amused by her. Like she's a villain that you're like, I kind of get her.
I mean, I get him too. In my mind, he's a very effective villain in the same way as the Wicked Queen or Ursula. Like, he has just enough of a motivation because it is like a modern time, but even then the Disney villains have always had some kind of motivation. And so it's like, I get it. I get what I get his whole deal. And I was like, I don't need any more backstory on him. We're good.
Yep.
So she shows up to the ceremony in her fairy godmother-esque cloak. And there was a reference to a fairy godmother earlier. I was like, okay. And then so then at the ceremony, they're like, Simon O'Donoghue. And I was like, wow. No.
The Irish kid.
He betrayed her for his
Edmund.
wish. And he's going to get his wish granted.
Yes, Edmund.
But the way his wish is granted, it looks like, I don't think that was his wish.
I also thought that was weird because his wish was to be a knight for the king.
Yeah, I think at best maybe it was to be a knight, but I don't think that was not Simon's real wish at all.
I think it was
because
like
I feel
to
like
protect something.
Because everybody's wishes are a little bit more vague. And I feel like his being that specific, because then also when the magic goes on to him, it's like pain magic, because he's like,
his eyes go green, he's in pain, and they're like, ooh.
It's giving cursed Eric in Little Mermaid.
It's like they took his generic or his vague wish and he turned it into specifically a knight for me. But it was probably like, I want to be able to protect people,
save the day,
and that's why he's in pain when he gets his wish, is because it's like it's a corrupt version of that wish.
It made me think of the like, my dad's forcing me to be the star quarterback.
Bolton, yeah. Or I guess Finn Hudson, yeah. But well, Finn Hudson's dad is not around. But anyways,
dead. Straight up dead. Yeah.
So he immediately rats out his friends as traitors because he's mind controlled.
Okay, so did anyone else think that it was maybe going to be the bashful girl because she disappeared before the ceremony? I was like, yeah. Well, but at the same time, I didn't want it to be her because I'm like, she wouldn't do that. She's too nice.
I figured it would be Simon because he was depressed. He lost his wish. And the name Simon Peter betrayed Jesus 3 times. they would have named him Judas, but
the
they didn't want to.
Disney lore.
Yeah.
Well, everybody's name, all of them began with the same letter as their dwarf counterparts.
They would have named him Judas, though, but they would have had to pay Lady Gaga for the rights.
Yeah,
yeah. Famously invented Judas. So she talks to a mouse, and the mouse speaks to the queen, the ancestor of Gus Gus. So she gets up there.
It did make me think of that scene in Once Upon a Time where he's like, "Hey, I used to live in Cinderella's kitchen."
Yeah, and so she tells the queen, like, "Hey, you once said like generosity is the most important thing, and like if you care about this kingdom, like you have to do something. The people need you." And the mouse is like, "Love, Asha." I added the love part.
I was like, okay,
so cute.
It's so cute, yeah. And then so the mouse scurries off, and because the queen, Asha immediately clocks like, "Oh, she looks scared." The queen looks scared because she was just threatened. She's in a domestic violence situation.
Her own,
literally.
I guess I feel like one of Asha's talents is emotional intelligence.
Yeah.
This is why she's not a pick-me. She's a girl's girl. She's like, she is not okay. I'm going to help her.
Yeah.
She's the person who's like, sees her friend distressed at a party, like cornered by some creepy guy, and comes over and is like, hey.
She has those like Snow White kind of trusts everyone. Like she just assumes good intent. Asha can tell with people, I feel like.
Yeah.
Which is different than say like a Rapunzel.
Rapunzel, to her credit, was in a tower, very isolated.
She was gaslit for every moment of her life. But and that's not a knock to Snow White or Rapunzel. That's just like, oh, this is the way this heroine's slightly different. Like she's very attuned to people's vibes because she's made out of star vibes, you know. She finds her friends and they're like, "You're getting us in trouble," and she's like, "No, he's bad." And then they sing what I think is the worst song hands down in this movie, and probably one of the top 10 worst Disney songs in general, "Knowing What We Know Now." It's like,
oh, that's the name of the song. I forgot the name.
No, we don't know. We know it's that song.
It somehow Married the Mole is a better song than this.
I was like, I'm really missing a Savages Part 2 from Pocahontas.
Okay, why did I think of that as well? I was just like Savages, and then again, apparently I'm just thinking of Don Bluth today.
But like it's when I heard the song, when I heard the song in the soundtrack, didn't really like it, but I'm like, oh, I assume this is a montage song as they do a rebellion. I was like, no.
I was wondering why they made all the stuff with like the random things in her cool hideaway, which I'm like, if they don't make this an attraction at Disney for introverts who need a break.
But I was like, why is this? Yeah, what are they doing? I assume they'd be but they're just vibing. They're just like making noises.
Crashing the
like,
camp.
We're a revolution.
Are they
and
like
nobody hears us.
I was like,
I was like, is this a practice session for them putting their plan together?
This is seize the day. That's
no, absolutely not.
Yeah,
I thought they were gonna have like, okay, this is you, and this like little washcloth is somebody else. Like I thought they were gonna do like that type of thing.
And there's a lot of her explaining the logistics where I'm like, shouldn't she just be like, oh, he says that, to explain it in dialogue, then use the song to capture the emotion of like, oh, we're upset, we're gonna work together. But instead we got, I was sweet and now I'm something else. Like it was just the lyrics were at their worst, and the singing was like how the actors were supposed to sing it wasn't good. The song was bad.
Like a bad Glee cover.
I forgot that it existed until this moment.
Some of the discourse that I've seen has been about this specific song, saying this song feels like it should have been in a musical, like more musical theater than a Disney musical. And I'm like, I can see the grain where they're starting from. But
I could see also setting up the tower or whatever. That makes sense if you're on a stage and you're not doing a montage.
Yeah.
You're on stage, you're stuck, you're bound by more physicality.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then the queen shows up, and they're like, and then the queen, okay, her part where she's like, I've seen more bad things than I can count. And I'm like, you just saw him being bad like today. That's the arc you have right now. This isn't you you've got some weird vibes. We haven't seen like horrible things.
Well, I'm wondering if she's like just talking about her past in general, that like, yeah, I've been through some stuff, I've seen some stuff, but then I'm like, but do I care? Does this matter?
And then she's like, so profound, love so profound. I mentioned it before, I've written a musical or two. Some of these lyrics remind me of things that like how I would write a song when I was a teenager, because it's like, you're new. It's their first musical. I get it. They're new, but it's like, this is also like multi-million-dollar movie. So it's like, maybe do another draft.
Get some veterans.
Do a few drafts. So it's like the words aren't in weird spots. And so
I love that you're saying do a few drafts as if they haven't done a few drafts. And I kind of love the idea that they just kind of threw it together.
It feels like it. It sounds like it.
It does. Again, my main thing is the songs themselves do not fit the context of the movie, either directly and I know with that like, love song or indirectly with this, where it's like, this feels super out of place and weird.
And just the vibe.
So something about like the way that they make these movies, that like there's that one Making of Frozen 2 documentary on Disney Plus, which I highly recommend. But there's like a scene in that where they're talking about like Elsa's song in Frozen 2 and how they're going to incorporate it, because like part of the animation was done, like the song was kind of done, and like some of the animation, and they had to like fix both to make it work, because they were like not sure where the story was going. And I'm like, half of this movie is like animated, but it explains a lot, because that happened with Brave as well.
Yeah, and that is a huge problem. That is like, you're in the trenches. Again, as someone who works in animation, usually you want all the songs, all the story beats, everything done before animation begins. Before you start that expensive process, you might want to make sure you're only animating what you need, what you work. And so I feel like maybe the deadline was tight and this song was good enough in their mind. But group songs like this are hard. But I'm like, you don't feel the emotion of like, we're rebelling, and the way when like, this poor woman whose legacy has been bastardized by this Disney movie, but like Pocahontas, when she's like running and she's like, I gotta stop this, with like the animals and stuff, like you feel her in that moment. And I think that would have worked, because even they're like happy to drop in at one point. And I'm like, it sounds like you wrote this, so they're like dropping in, like it was written for a montage, and then they decided to have them dance around.
Yeah, I don't know why I keep thinking, when I think of this song, like of the song that it makes me think of in another movie, is like the part in The Prince of Egypt when they're like getting ready to like leave Egypt. Like, and there's like the duet with Miriam and Moses' wife, like
When You Believe.
Yeah, like I needed like that.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, I believe in your cause because I like these characters.
But they deserved a better song.
They agreed.
Yeah. And then because it ends with them just going like, ta-da, which is, it can be a bit, again, did that in that musical I wrote when I was a teenager. It's very fun live when you're watching teenagers you most likely personally know doing it. In an animated movie,
no. Yeah. It's so weird.
And then they're gonna do their thing. The queen is like, oh, she's in the woods. And then the star is giving Asha a wand. Thank God they didn't say bippity boppity boo. I was real scared they were. I did watch, I don't know what a bootleg is, but I did watch the Britney Spears pop musical Once Upon a One More Time, set in with fairy tale characters on somewhere. But there were so many bippity boppity boo jokes. Like, you get one tops, people. And none of them were good. But anyway, so she's like, okay, and then the king is chasing her, and then the queen and Dahlia are trying to look at the magic book, and then they realize it's forbidden magic. So like, once you touch one,
break it.
Yeah, you can't break it. And then
I was just like, can the trees march to the castle and take away the power? Like, I was like, we got to have a Macbeth loophole. Was somebody a C-section baby? Like, I don't know if it's just because like this is me as a person, but I'm always like, okay, like, is there a Macbeth element?
Because you are the one who will always
Shakespeare enough that they could.
Yeah, that is a you thing to immediately go to a Macbeth solution. But then they're like,
but a lot of to my credit though, a lot of things about like witches and magic come from that play, like the whole like cauldron boil double boil. Yeah, that's
we talk about that all the time. Good old King James, son of Mary Queen of Scots. We love her, don't feel so great about him, but so then they're jumping down. They like realize that they have to jump and pull the ropes. They have to jump from the balcony. Gobbo's scared of heights. And then the goat's like, we got to jump. So then it opens the windows and the wishes can fly up and out. And then the star is helping them. But then, plot twist, the king wasn't there. He shapeshifted Simon. So it's Simon.
This stressed me out.
This was stressful. And then, but he's going to kill Asha. She gets knocked around quite a bit. But the bear, John the bear, steps in, helps
I was
her.
like, is he supposed to be Little John, like from Robin Hood? And they're not going to have the sexy fox because they're like, we did it twice. Somehow we made 2 sexy foxes and we can't do it again.
And there was a lot of I'm shortening. There's a lot of like magical mayhem in this scene. It was a fun little chase scene because she doesn't know how to use her wand yet.
Okay, also though, when they're like, you should be worried about them, like the rabbits, all I could think of is like the rabbit in Monty Python.
And so then, but then the star is going to be captured by Magnifico and all the wishes and a giant wish bubble. And she's like, she pulls a bell, she's in it, running in on horseback, like, stop. And then he's like, I'm the king of everything. I have all the magic. You all don't deserve me. And he's gone full Maleficent. There's green dragon magic, there's thorn magic, green hands like Ursula. He pulls the star into the staff, and it
made me think of like Ariel's voice being trapped in the seashell.
And he does a whole mirror on the wall thing where he's appearing on the mirrors because he's vain. He's very into his looks. So he's like, oh, mirror on the wall, who's the fairest of them all? Me. And then he's like, he essentially creates like projection mapping of thorns everywhere that bind everyone. And he's gonna murder this teenage girl in front of everyone. Yeah.
In the darkness bind them, that's all I can think of.
And so he's gonna murder this teenage girl, and everyone's like, ah. And then
this was like, we're past Dark Night of the Soul. I was like, this is like I was very concerned because I'm like, I don't know how we're getting out of this.
She was all tied up.
Upset.
It's a classic Disney climax. On a height, there's a cliff. The bad guys are winning. They have everything. And then we get a little reprise. One of, honestly, the strongest uses of music in this film. She sings like, I look up at the, because he has the power, he can block out the stars, so no one can even wish on a star anymore. He's like, he creates
Mordor.
All hope is gone. Yeah. And he's basically like, no more hope, no more dreams. And then she's like, we're the stars, essentially. Like, I look at the stars, like, we can make the magic. And then her friend Dahlia is the one who's like, we're greater than his magic combined. And then he's trying to kill her, and the queen saves her, and everyone starts singing like, I make this wish.
And somebody will write a fanfic about Dahlia and Asha. I was like, I see it being born in this moment.
Someone in the theater is like opening Wattpad on their phone. Sorry, don't have time to spell check. I'm in the theater. Everyone wishes, and the starness is inside them. And
they're little glowing things. Like, I was just like, Carebears there again. 80s.
So Carebears core. So they sing their little song about wishes, and the star breaks free. He's sucked into his own staff. They break free of the magic.
You got the Jafar treatment.
Jafar treatment. The magic.
I was like, maybe don't like hang on to it, because what if he escapes in a sequel, which I hope they don't make.
Well, I believe the sequel is Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, because he's the magic mirror. You see the mirror's face from Snow White go as it pops in.
I didn't even think of that.
And because he's vain, That's why he's like,
oh my gosh,
yeah,
he's the mirror.
Wicked Queen, yeah, your teenage stepdaughter, she more banging than you, murder her. Like, yeah. So he's because she's like, we're gonna put it in the dungeon. So somewhere it got transferred. There was a dungeon estate sale.
I'm sure it was in Once Upon a Time. I feel like they'd be like, do you want a weird explanation for this? We got one.
You're like, no. The Once Upon a Time explanation was that one of the few characters of color early on was a genie who was in love with her, and she tricked him into being the mirror.
I forgot about that.
Still simping for her as the mirror. Yeah. So he's mirrored. The magic goops away. The light is there. The star is happy. Everyone gets their wishes. They're finally themselves again.
I like when the one guy's like, I can't wait to get started. And then like, I'm like, so then, like, enter this achieve your wishes self-help program.
Well, I mean, it is interesting because like the fact that, people couldn't pursue their own desires. Like they couldn't.
Because they're not really doing anything for themselves. I guess going back to like, it's feudalism. Everything is like for the kingdom.
Yeah. So now the queen's in charge. They're looking to her leadership.
We love a queen in Disney.
Yeah, Disney's in their queen era.
Which is funny because I'm like, for a while it was like, queen's bad, queens might kill you in Snow White.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And because some of the people who, like Charles Perrault, when he was writing some fairy tales, had personal beef with dowager queens. So he was putting that in there.
I felt like this queen was supposed to be like Elsa vibes because like just the way she was designed was not necessarily like Elsa, but more like a Idina
Yeah, I mean, it's rare to kind of see like a 35-year-old woman in Disney animation. Like those don't exist. It's like you mama, your grandmother, dead. You're dead. Like,
or you turn into a bear. But that's
great. So she's like, oh, get together and work on the flying machine. Here's Peter, a grown-ass man, trying to make a flying machine.
Buff for no reason.
But I didn't like that one. That was a no for
that was what I wrote down as like, it's Disney doing too much. Like even like the genie's head turning into Pinocchio in Aladdin, like that's actually funny. Like that's why I feel like that type of stuff has to be relegated to like side character for comic relief. That's why I wasn't bothered when Valentino made his like Zootopia reference.
Yeah, he's gonna make society where all mammals are equal. Yeah, that was funny.
Because like if you're a kid, you're just like, oh, that's funny because it's funny, but like then you get it when you're older. I felt like it's one of those jokes. But like,
yeah, because if it's the origin story, if this is a canon origin, Peter Pan's a little boy. Yeah, unless we're going with the Once Upon a Time where he reverse ages and abandons his son Rumpelstiltskin spoilers. But like
I'm gonna disappear now. I'm disappearing.
Talking about the show, disappear. Talking about the show Once Upon a Time, especially after a certain point, is brain breaking. But they're
just like, we put a hot pirate. You should just keep watching it. I'm like, I will, but I'm
upset. So they're all pursuing their wishes. The fairy has to go soon, or the star, but he puts some sparkles on Asha's dress.
The star has to go because it's like Mary Poppins.
Yeah. He put some stars or sparkles on her dress just in time to be sold as a doll at Target. And well, if you go to Walmart,
just in time for the holiday season,
you only get regular Asha. If you want sparkle cloak Asha, that's a Target exclusive.
Oh, really?
No, but it could be.
Okay, the way you said it, I'm like, they would do that though.
They would. That's a common thing, yeah. So they're like, oh, he's like, oh, a wand, and she's like, I know how to use this, and he makes it all thin. And then Gawa's like, I'll take it. They're like, no, it's Asha's. And she's like, oh, they're like, you can be a fairy godmother.
That bothered me.
That was like,
even though it took me a while to realize that that's what her cloak was. I was like, I've seen this cloak. It's not Snow White's. It's not Sleeping Beauty's. It's in Cinderella. Cinderella doesn't wear a cloak. Oh, it was fairy godmother. That was like my brain thought process.
I think if it had just been the Easter egg of the cloak, that
again,
fine.
They thrive better in the subtle. If you do it too obvious, it's like you're not the Muppets. It doesn't work.
Yeah, they referenced fairy godmother twice. Okay, she's
do you think they underestimated the people who'd be seeing this movie? Yes. And that they're like, okay, we can't. Thank you. We can't have all Easter eggs. Some of them have to be obvious. Someone's not going to understand the cloak reference. Meanwhile, like, they're going to
have the guy literally
like,
Disney bounding dopey.
Yeah.
I don't understand.
There's some like
it's such a weird imbalance between like the very obvious call outs and like just subtle stuff.
And I feel, and I don't know if this is just like a getting older thing, but I feel like when it's like, we have to point this out, otherwise you won't know. And like, okay, we're not stupid. Like even little kids can figure things out.
Yeah, she's very obvious. It's an obvious costume. It's a well-designed character that's been around a long time. I feel
like if you're a little kid, you're like, she has a wand. She's going to be magic. She's going to use magic. That's fun.
Yeah.
And then does like the little kid need to know that she's going to be a fairy godmother? Probably
because
not.
Someone's gonna, right. I can feel the typing happening. They're gonna complain that the fairy godmother is Caucasian in the Cinderella movie, and how can this biracial girl be?
Maybe it's her daughter.
And I hate that even more. I hate trying to be like, okay, and how many generations until Cinderella? And it's again, what is a godmother? It is a fairy that vouched for bringing you up in Catholicism at your baptism. So it's like, now it's like, okay, so does she fly around granting wishes?
Samuel Jackson's gonna come and be like, I'm recruiting you for my league of fairy godmothers, because you have the 3 good fairies.
Yeah.
I want League of Fairies that movie.
Yeah.
A Nick Fury led Charlie's Angels-esque fairy godmothers action movie, Disney style.
Yeah. Explaining the origin of the feud between the 3 good fairies and Maleficent. But
they were enemies in college.
It's like a fairy heist. Well, it's whenever I'm subjected to the Timothée Chalamet Wonka
oh god.
I was subjected to it before this movie.
I always think I'd rather, instead of paying however much for the IP people paid, why couldn't they have just made like a origin of the fairy godmother movie? That would have been interesting. You could have like Sleeping Beauty, you could have Cinderella, you could have different fairy tales with a fairy godmother and like kind of her learning, like what her mission in life is. So I'm like, I'm not opposed to that idea and like kind of reinventing the fairy godmother, but no one really ever gives enough thought to reinventing the fairy godmother, who's always like kind of this weird side. Yeah.
Because she's an archetype, because there's an archetype of like the wise figure.
Yeah.
Because you have either fairy godmother or you have like Rafiki, you have somebody, you have, I guess, the wardrobe in Beauty and the Beast, like somebody,
Mrs. Potts,
Mrs. Potts.
maybe.
Mrs. Potts.
Yeah.
I was like,
the wardrobe does provide outfits, if that's
the wardrobe will be your sassy gay friend to give you outfits, but like, yeah, like you have the Mrs. Potts, you have some sort of like wise older figure, like that is the archetype.
Yeah.
So
we get the star does the little sweeping castle credits. It's done. It's the movie. We talked about the credits already. And then I had this horrific thought, which I'm scared to say out loud.
Oh no.
What if Disney starts remaking their animated movies as new animated movies?
No.
Why would you say that? Why would you put that
because I know that's
knocking on all the wood.
It's the worst idea. But watching this, I was like, oh no, what if they did it?
But why?
They're
not going to George Lucas.
Well, no, what if they do it to make it all shared universe? No.
Like the Avengers.
The thing is, the shared universe worked with Pixar because it was fun little Easter eggs. And whenever people try to shoehorn that like so-and-so's actually related to Hercules and then like Tarzan is like related to Elsa and Anna, I'm like, no, stop. They're write a fanfic and be quiet.
No, but what if they're like, wait, people online are talking about that? That's what they want. So we should make that.
I don't think that these executives have been on the parts of the internet where people are talking about this.
I don't
know. No. People are telling. Well, yeah. Also, some of the executives are probably like, at least people who are close to the executives aren't too far ahead of us in age. So like they grew up in that Tumblr Wattpad era, but also, people who are now producing things and pitching ideas are people our age who grew up with that. Like, we're in that era and now are like shared universe of all of the fairy tales that we have.
But I hate that. But that's what Disney already has. When you go to Disneyland or Disney World, just keep it there.
Which one of the best fanfics I ever read was about the logistics of what it was like for the characters to live in Disneyland. It was mildly dystopian, slightly unintentionally, but it did some really good character work with that, and I loved it. But
let's make it an animated movie, no. Disney. Come on.
But it's because they have all your wishes in the vault, because the vault of all of the movies. I wrote that down. Vault of wishes equals Disney
the
vault
of movies. Yeah, so that was Wish. Do we root for our protagonist?
Yeah.
I guess because she's the protagonist. Well, yeah, no, I definitely do root for her because he's diabolical. Even just the general idea of I'm going to keep the wishes safe is diabolical. Please change this society.
And she's kind and she's very motivated by trying to help. She's not just like my wish. She's very motivated on helping the people in her community. And
she's fun to watch. I like seeing her hair move around. Like, yeah. I'm like, I can see little girls dressing as her for Halloween, and I love that for them.
Absolutely.
And it's a simple enough costume that a parent could make a version.
Yeah.
They're gonna sell a lot of plushes of both the star and the goat.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
The other characters, like her friends, are good enough.
I wished I had more time with them. Like that was something that I wrote down. Like I want to hang out with the friends. I want to live in the world. If anything comes from this TV series, like remember when Disney made everything into a spin-off TV series?
I mean, Tangled got one.
Yeah.
I haven't listened to the Frozen podcast series yet.
Emperor's New School.
Oh gosh. The Goat and the Star cute. Queen, interesting. I mean, I mainly liked her outfit, but she was fun enough.
I didn't think she was really much of anything, which sucked because she's clearly going to be the new ruler of this kingdom. And I'm like, but you guys just went through all of that. You guys are ready to give it to his wife? Really?
Yeah.
I mean,
I think because she openly stood against him.
I feel like the design of their kingdom was cool. Like I liked seeing all the little things on the brooches. Even like the grandpa had cool little designs.
It was very the kingdom was very well designed. What do we think of our antagonist?
Evil
Chris Pine.
Evil Chris Pine.
Ask me what kind of antagonist is. It's a Chris Pine.
He did a good job of being the antagonist. Like honestly, I don't think I've seen him do a bad job. Like most things I've seen him did a good job.
Yeah.
Did what he was asked to do.
Yeah, even like the Into the Woods movie, like he was one of the best parts of it.
Of all the Chris's, I'm like, if you put him in the movie, he blends into the movie enough that you don't feel like
it's the opposite of Chris Pratt.
Yes.
On the Chris continuum.
That's such a good point. And also, I think it sounded like he was having fun.
Yeah, he was like enjoying getting to be like evil and diabolical
and I could feel that he was enjoying doing the part, which I think sometimes doesn't always happen.
Mm-hmm.
But like, yeah, he was fine.
And the villain,
I think he's effective. I think you said that before. He's very effective
because he's scary. Like he's using this magic, like he's gonna kill her. Like,
and if you also like, you guys went very much into like, which is now that I'm listening to it, it's super obvious, of the very like Disney focus of like the wishes representing, like actual wishes. And I was like, these are human rights up here. I see them as human rights and they're being withheld.
But I mean, that's also
if you think of it that way. Yeah, but if you think of it that way, it's also like scary. It's like, oh, this is the real world. That's why I think this movie is about dissent against the government and fighting for your rights.
Yeah.
Well, I don't disagree with that. I also feel like it's, I guess, in continuing with the Disney's more recent thing of like, is he a handsome guy? He could be evil.
Yeah.
As we get to our question, let me see, because I wrote some of the. So I know people, especially like the AV Club, like there was criticism of the referential nature.
Which is, I understand that, like, because like I said, it's better when it's like subtle nod.
And there's a bit of it, it's like because Disney is essentially the American imperialism version of Fairy Tale Wonder, that it's like, which is both, I think, slightly disingenuous in that I think Disney is kind of like an American evolution of these stories. Right.
Yeah.
But I also think because the Brothers Grimm be making money on these too when they first came out. You know, this is the rabbit hole I was texting Hannah about. So okay, I get the critique of that, but also we as a society have chosen to only mostly share with our children the Disney version for reasons of censorship, because we felt like it was safer and cleaner, and for reasons of parents not wanting to spend time. Like, I got onto the other stories because my mom was like, no, we're not going to get another Disney book. Go get this book that's probably above your reading level, but like, go get this book and you're going to read these stories. And like, so she took my interest and pushed me beyond the corporate IP. And we talk about that in like a podcast origin story, right? But a lot of parents there's like a very real reason of a lot of parents don't have the time to be reading to their kids, to be engaging with their kids about media because of American imperialism and the society we live in. People are struggling to feed their children. So to have time to like sit and read with your child is a privilege, is a luxury. And so to have the time, then also a parent who's willing to devote the time to that. There are people who have the privilege and the money to do so, but are unwilling to devote that time to encouraging their children on that path to reading, sharing those stories with their children. So we have generally kind of handed over Fairy Tale Wonder to Disney.
That's true. It's kind of like the when I do the rewrite a classic fairy tale project in creative writing class, I had a lot of kids be like, okay, well, like, I'm just gonna have like the stepmother be like they were thinking about the Disney version, but what, because they were like, oh well, in the Disney version this happens. I'm like, I gave you a website, I need you to go find something from here.
Yeah.
And like eventually they figured it out, but like there was also like always some kid who's like, I'm gonna find a very bizarre German fairy tale that I want to retell. There's always that kid.
Well, have fun. They're learning, you know, it's like,
but like that's for some of them, that's their first time experiencing that.
Yeah, because you as their teacher are taking the time and energy to encourage that.
And I think on top of all of this is that you as an English teacher have the previous knowledge of knowing these stories exist. Maybe there are quite a few parents who don't know that these stories exist because maybe they too also, especially from our generation, they grew up on the Disney version. So like they've never read the Grimm. Like I didn't read many of the Grimm fairy tales. So it's like, it makes sense that some of that has been even more siloed, is because even the adults having children have a very siloed idea of what the fairy tales are.
Yeah. And I love Disney and I love the Disney version of a lot of stories. But sometimes the reason I love Disney is because it is a way for me to engage with stories I love in a way that people I'm conversing with will understand. I don't mean that in a condescending way about the people in my life, but I mean that it's like a cultural touchstone that people will understand when you reference. Like if you say The Little Mermaid, Ariel will immediately come up in people's brains. And that's, you know, and that's the way it is. But I think sometimes we get mad at Disney. And yes, they're an evil empire, but it's like we also made it. Like I think we forget that our media is a reflection of us as a society, what we want to see. What that Hollywood isn't known for being a trailblazer as much as a reflection of us. And so it's like, this is what we said we wanted.
And now for like, we hate this is garbage. It's like, do we hate us? Are we garbage?
Are we forky?
Well, and also trash? Like people being upset about like the princesses being quirky. I'm like, all of them are a reflection of like ideal traits of womanhood of their time. Like, because you think about Sleeping Beauty acting like a stereotypical 1960s teenager.
Yeah, like her kind of like, she was, I mean, the thing is, she's kind of a little ditzy at times too. And she's like, oh, never. Oh, in the cottage. Like, JK tonight, you know? It's just like, as a society, we were a little more held back then and a little more like, so she was like quirky for her time. You know? And now it's like, we're a little less.
We don't like looking into the mirror. We don't like what we see.
Mirror, mirror on the
wall. I also feel like society hates teenage girls. So there's that.
Yeah, it's a kind of, we have an obsession and a hatred of them. It's like,
we want to know what they think is cool, but we also hate for them for what they think is cool.
Yeah.
And I'm just, the discourse is like, because we had people talked about the pick-me girl, and then there was everyone
I still don't understand how she could be a pick-me.
And then everything,
haven't heard a good reason for it.
And then pick-me has then became just applied to anyone. It's like the Karen thing. And then now we're in the
It's like queer baiting.
Yeah, it's like just people get a phrase and they like wear it to death. And then 10 years from now, like Fox News will mention it in every newscast that they do. Like that's the like triggered, you know?
Yeah.
Because someone was referencing Brett Cooper, who's making a new conservative Snow White movie against Rachel Ziegler, who's like the mini female Ben Shapiro. But she said something, she kept using triggered, and someone was like, is this 2014? Why do you keep saying triggered? Yeah, okay. Wow, Wish. Was that your fantasy?
If I could spend more time in the woods, I was like, this seems nice. Also, did you notice, I forgot to say this, that she has Snow White's wishing well?
Yeah, there's a wishing well, or with the star, and it's like, oh, shout out.
I thought the star was gonna get stuck in there.
I did
and
too,
then
for a
like
second.
people were gonna get wishes that way.
Oh, that's kind of interesting.
I bet someone pitched that in a story meeting. That was
well. Do you remember the one episode of New Adventures of Winnie the Pooh where they go inside the wishing well and they like have wishes, but they realize that they're unsatisfied because their wishes are lame?
Yeah, and Tigger wishes for
what
too
a
much.
Weirdly existential children's television.
Winnie the Pooh gets existential all the time. Yeah. Hannah, what would you say? Was that your fantasy?
No. Okay, so much like Frozen before it, the trailer that I had seen, I had no idea what this story was really going to be about. And so I was like, I don't think I want to see that. But then again, I have a podcast, so I was like, we got to see it. And so I actually went in with zero expectations. And so I don't feel disappointed. I don't feel upset. I did kind of continuously remind myself, I'm like, I don't find this funny. There were some things I found cute, like sometimes the goat and the star really got me. I was like, that's cute as hell. But then like the singing chicken scene, didn't find that funny. And then I'm like, I'm not the target audience for this scene. So it's one of those things where perhaps it is Disney is making movies in a way that it's like, oh, this just isn't my era for Disney. Yeah. Or it's like they're continuously catering to children and I'm not a child. I don't have a child. Maybe I don't have a childlike sense of wonder anymore. It's just like, it's not my thing. So that's where my sadness or my disappointment comes from, is that like, I wish I could like this movie and I don't know why I can't. And I think it's because I'm old.
I think I don't think you're old, but I think that's a very valid, like, your thoughts are valid. No, but like, no, that makes a lot of sense what you just said. That's what I mean to say. I get it.
That makes me wonder though, like, is this going to be a movie that like little kids will be like, I want to watch Wish? Like, because I think of like being a little kid and I'm like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Like, I know music has a lot to do with Encanto, because a lot of my students, they're like my nieces and nephews or my cousins or my younger siblings, they want to watch Encanto all the time. They want to watch Frozen all the time. But like, I don't know about this one. I think music has a lot
to do with that. And I don't think the music is good enough.
Yeah.
Because the music is how you understand the story a lot as a kid, because you can learn the songs, they stick with you. And since none of them stuck with me, and I tend to be an ideal audience for most things, I'm like, are they going to stick with little kids?
It's very easy.
Is it going to be like,
yeah.
Is it going to be like Mr. Tabernacle?
Struggled with the context of the music in the movie. I think kids are going to be like, what is happening?
It is a little,
or they're going to be like, I don't care.
Yeah, I don't care this turtle. I mean, it is my fantasy because I like wishes, and it's like, obviously. But if we're on a scale of 1 to 10, this is like a 6 or 7. So it's
a 6 or 7, really.
So what I mean is like, I like with 5 being like, now it's bad. Now I consider it kind of bad. Like 5 and below. I consider this just beyond bad.
5 below.
Yeah.
Not so just like, okay.
So it's like it's mid. Like it's just, I think it's like, it's fine. I think it has some interesting characters, has some fun lore. Okay. I don't think the music really is that great.
For me, the music tanks it.
Yeah, the music, because the music is usually the strength. Like you can get kind of a weird movie, but you get some good music. it'll have a legacy. And I think the music is what tanks it. I think if they have better songs, this could be like a 9 or 10. I think this
like
story
the
has
animation.
Yeah.
I saw some people hating on it, saying like it's not as good as Spider-Man or like the Puss in Boots movie, and I'm like,
I mean, Rafa didn't really like the animation either, but I think that's fine. It's not for everybody. I thought it was
fine.
I felt like I was in a storybook. I think that's why I was like, I like the feeling of being in a storybook, and then also I was like, do I want to go to Disneyland now?
Which is what they wanted to think.
Yeah, because it's like I want to go in a castle like courtyard and like get a snack. Like that's kind of like what they show you at the beginning.
So this is just an hour and a half long animated commercial for Disneyland and Disney World.
It is, yeah.
It is, yeah.
I mean, I just think, it could be great, but it's very much okay. And that's why it's like, I don't dislike it, and I would rewatch it, but I also think what makes it rewatching is it's interesting. There's stuff to talk about.
Yeah.
Because that's the thing is I'd rather a movie end up mid because it could have been great and kind of missed than a movie end up mid because like the concept was in and of itself like whatever.
I think actually if it wasn't a musical, I actually think I would probably like it.
But I think it needed to be a musical. It just needed to be a better musical. Yeah.
Well, yeah, but I'm saying like if you take the music that exists out of it, like if I were to fast forward, well, I can't fast forward because some of them do matter, but if the music wasn't there and it was just the story, I would probably be like, yeah, that was pretty good.
Yeah, it's a good story and it's a good animation. It's the music.
Yeah.
I think they took a risk on these composers and I don't think it paid off.
The other thing too that I saw, like the people complaining that like it wasn't the king and queen both being evil, and I'm like, I don't think we needed that. And people saying that like they were gonna have like the star be a person that she fell in love with, and I'm like, I don't think we needed that either, especially with like the whole motif of like the star being
well, also she doesn't need to have a love story.
No,
like
I mean, I think we're
at a phase where we can have a story without the protagonist being in love.
I mean, my hot take is that I think numbers wise, a vast majority of the heroines of color do not get love interests compared to the white heroines. So that's because I think when you look at the pantheon of these characters, I think but I think Asha is still very pretty. So it's not like, but I do think there's can be a bit of a, like love and the love romance adventure is for white girls. And you have to be strong and hard. And I know some women of color who've brought that forward. Now, I don't think this movie needed a love story.
No. I also feel like, because in Kanto, I don't feel like that it was the point either, because like, isn't this one of the sisters or the cousin ends up marrying the
Dolores?
Boy. Yeah.
So it's like, I think we could have I'd like another love story at some point. It's been a minute, but I don't think every movie needs to be a love story.
Here's my speaking of love stories, I actually thought that Simon's wish was that he wanted to fall in love with Asha.
And that's
what I thought it was going to be. And I thought he was going to be like, he was going to get his wish so he could be with Asha. But then his wish was to protect. I don't know why. I was just like, boom.
But see, that would be interesting because he would think, but if I rat her out, but then if my wish is granted, that would in a way protect her.
But he also doesn't know what his wish is.
But he wanted to get his wish, right? That was his motivation for doing that. And so I actually ended up thinking his wish, that would be like, I want my wish back. But it turns out
it's for her.
He's gonna rat them out. He gets his wish is like to be in love with her, and now she's not gonna be in love with him because he ratted her out. Like, I thought that was going to be part of the conflict.
I do think some of these plots, like some of the elements, would make a very interesting, like, older kid / adult film.
Yeah.
And I think that's where sometimes the high conceptness of this movie gets in its own way, because it needs to be simple because it's a family film.
Because like the Seven Dwarf Friends, they're not unlike like characters in Sky High. Like I could see like that type of thing.
I'm glad they embraced a villain again. We've been asking them. I'm glad. And I think because if they tried to have some generational trauma as the antagonist again, oh my gosh, like it would be this movie would be incomprehensible. This needed a villain, but yeah, I feel like every time they try and imitate the art style of Sleeping Beauty, it doesn't go well for them. But Black
When was the
Cauldron,
other time? Black Cauldron,
and
yeah.
Sleeping Beauty itself didn't go well.
Yeah, that's true. I was also going to say, like, it's sad that it doesn't go well for them because it's such a lovely art style.
Yeah.
And I also think I saw a Tumblr post that I was like, okay, we're reaching. That was like, she doesn't have a love interest because the actress who plays her is a lesbian. And I was like, that's not, I don't think Ariana DeBose has that much control over the story.
It's okay. Yeah. People need to stop discoursing, even though we just discoursed for however much time. But I think
we roasted the discourse for a very long time, and then we talked about the actual movie in good faith.
Yeah, I think it's just the bad faith discourse. Cait, is there anything you want to plug?
I don't think I have anything that I want to plug except, like, if you were inspired to be an activist like Asha, like, go find a worthy cause, maybe like supporting a local charity in this season of giving.
Be generous to your community like Asha.
Love it.
Advocate for teachers being paid more, maybe, so people can understand how
media
stories
literacy. Honestly, please. We're in the trenches.
The shirt that I almost wore today was my America Needs Teachers shirt.
Well, we do. You can find Not My Fantasy on Instagram and the TikTok, Not My Fantasy Pod. You can find us on YouTube at Not My Fantasy. And
hello.
Hi.
Sorry, my video looks like crap today.
It's okay. It happens to all of us. Her wish was stolen. Remember to smash that like button and hit the bell notification to subscribe. Get notifications. We're prepping for some holiday shenaniganery as we then entering a new year.
Holy crap, yeah, it's gonna be Christmas soon. Happy belated Thanksgiving. Get ready for Mariah Carey season.
It's upon us. You can follow me on Instagram as well at Cullen Ever After, and tune in next episode for something
holiday festivities.
Yeah, something that is unfortunate but inevitable. We'll be talking about a Vanessa Hudgens holiday movie.
The Vanessa Hudgens verse.
Vanessa Hudgens verse. We're doing
quite literally
a standalone film though, the night before Christmas, and we're having a friend who has personal beef with Vanessa Hudgens on the pod. So
love that.
Yeah,
it feels good to be able to say, tune in next episode for a specific topic.
Specific thing. We're back, baby.
I enjoyed the general Halloween one.
Thanks.
Thank you. We appreciate that.
We were doing our best. Yeah. So, Cait, thank you so much for coming on.
No problem. I guess this is like my annual guest.
We'll see you next Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
Happy Epcot Ball Builder Descendants Day. Which I always think of do you remember the Vine where he was like, who do you have a crush on at school? And he's like, the Epcot Ball. And then it's like, oh, that is Melody. Chelsea. And not because she's pretty, because she's really smart.
Love it.
Love it. Yeah, well, thank you, everybody. And remember to believe in your wishes, because you're a star.
Yep.
Bye.
Firework.
Baby, you're a firework.